My name is Ethan Hayes. It took me 3 months to work up the nerve to ask the goddess I saw every morning at the subway station for her number. She smiled, sweet and shy. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. Turns out, getting that number was like pre-ordering a life sentence in a 5-star prison. This girl wasn't a goddess. She was a psycho who'd tucked away her wings and fangs. She'd corner me against a wall, her eyes glistening. "Ethan, I don't like the way you look at other people." My knees would be weak, but my mouth would be stubborn. "So, what are you going to do about it?" She'd stand on her toes and kiss me, her breath hot and consuming. "Lock you up so you can only look at me." How does that sound? Damn, one little pickup line, and I was doomed to a lifetime of being an introvert. My name is Ethan Hayes, and the bravest thing I've ever done wasn't taking the blame for my best friend when we were kids for putting a thumbtack on the teacher's chair, or the time I tried to sneak back into my dorm and fell into a dumpster. No, the bravest thing I ever did was spend 3 solid months psyching myself up to ask a girl for her number. You might not believe me, but this girl, she was different. Every morning at 8:20, like clockwork, she'd be there at the breakfast burrito truck outside the Liberty Square station's exit. And me? At 8:25, I'd be squeezing my way off the bus across the street. The first time I saw her, I thought my brain was hallucinating from all-night coding sessions. The sky was a little gray that day. She was wearing an ivory white sweater, her hair long and straight, like a curtain of black silk hanging down her back. Her skin was so pale it almost glowed. Her nose was perfect, and her lips were shaped in a way that made you want to commit a felony. But the real kicker was her vibe. Cool and distant, like a flower blooming on a snowy mountaintop. The rest of us haggard-faced cubicle drones, me included, just became background noise around her. She'd just stand there in line, quiet and calm, ordering a burrito with the kind of grace you'd expect from someone at a 5-star restaurant. One look, and my heart rate shot straight to 120. After that, it became my morning ritual. Time it just right, get off the bus, and then, from across the street, secretly watch her buy a breakfast burrito. After 3 days of this, I texted my best friend, "Dave, I think I'm sick. It's a disease where I'll die if I don't see the breakfast burrito goddess." Dave texted back, "Dumbass, go get her number." I chickened out instantly. No way, she looks like the type to call the cops. But I couldn't stop thinking about her. And that little itch lasted for 3 months. 90 days! Rain or shine, I didn't care if I got docked for being late. It was all worth it for those 5 minutes of visual therapy. This morning, I looked at the reasonably handsome guy in a mirror, even ran a hand through my hair. I took a deep breath. Ethan Hayes, do or die. Today's the day. My heart was trying to beat its way out of my throat as I crossed the street. The closer I got, the weaker my knees felt. Today she was wearing a light blue sundress that cinched at her tiny waist. From the side, her curves were enough to make you whistle. Standing behind her in line, I could smell a faint, clean scent, kind of like fresh-cut grass after the rain, but with a hint of sweetness. Crap, now I was even more nervous. I watched her pay and turned to leave, burrito in hand. It was now or never, my brain short-circuited. I took a step forward, my tongue tied in knots. Excuse me, miss." She stopped and turned to look at me. She had beautiful almond-shaped eyes, her pupils so dark they looked like grapes soaked in water. "Could I maybe get your number?" My voice was shaking. I felt like a shoplifter caught red-handed. She didn't say anything, just looked at me. There was surprise in her eyes, but not disgust. The seconds ticked by. I was so embarrassed I could have carved out a 3-bedroom apartment with my toes. It was over. Of course, she was going to reject me. A girl who looked like that, there was no way. Just as I was about to look for a hole to crawl into, she suddenly smiled. The corners of her lips curved up, her eyes crinkled slightly, and that cool distance melted away like spring wind on a frozen lake. Okay, her voice was nice too, clear and bright. I just stood there, stunned, my brain failing to process. She'd already pulled out her phone and brought up her contact card, holding the screen out to me. "You want to scan it?" "Huh? Oh, yeah, scan. I'll scan." I fumbled for my phone, my thumb failing the fingerprint scan 3 times before it finally worked. With a trembling finger, I opened the scanner app. The beep was like a choir of angels. Looking at the contact request on my screen, the profile picture was a cute cartoon kitten, the name just Jessica. I was so excited I almost bowed to her. I'm Ethan Hayes. I blurted out, Jessica Miller. Her voice was soft. The way she said my name made half my body go numb. Well, I should get going. Right. Okay. Bye. Be safe. I was a babbling idiot. She smiled at me one more time, then turned and disappeared into the morning rush. I stood there, staring at the new contact in my phone, feeling like I was in a dream. The air was sweet, the car horns were a symphony, and even the burrito guy yelling out orders sounded like a victory march composed just for me. Huh, Jessica Miller. What a beautiful name. I clutched my phone, feeling like I was on top of the world, completely oblivious to the fact that this wasn't my lucky day. I had just personally signed for a lifetime, non-refundable super-glued-on contract for a sweet deal. The price, just the rest of my life. The day I got her number, I was practically floating at work. I'd just be staring at a block of code and start grinning for no reason. Mark, the guy in the cubicle across from me, leaned over. Ethan, you in the lottery or something? What's with the creepy smile? I hugged my phone, staring at that cartoon kitten icon, and tried to sound mysterious. Better than winning the lottery. Mark snorted. Yeah, right. Look at you. I didn't bother arguing. What would a guy who's been single for 30 years know about your heart trying to break the sound barrier? All day, I was unlocking my phone every few minutes, terrified I'd miss a message from Jessica. I had 1,000 debates in my head about the perfect opening line. Just a simple hello? Too boring. Send a meme? Too casual. Ask her if the burrito was good. God, could I sound any more like a clueless guy? I agonized over it until just before quitting time when my phone finally buzzed. Jessica, Image Jessica, got off work early today. Saw this and thought of you. The picture was of a fat orange cat, paws tucked under its belly, squinting like a king as it soaked up the sun on a park bench. My heart skipped a beat. She messaged me first, and she thought I like cats? I scrambled to reply. I love it. So much. This cat looks like my long-lost brother. The second I hit send, I wanted to slap myself. What a stupid thing to say. Jessica. Haha, you're funny. Jessica. He is really cute. Kind of like this guy I met this morning. A little dorky, but cute. I stared at the screen, feeling the heat rise in my face. She was talking about me, right? She had to be talking about me. She called me cute, damn. A grown man being called cute. And not only was I not mad, I was practically floating. Scratching head emoji. I was just nervous. I'm not usually like that. Jessica. I know. Jessica. Will I see you tomorrow morning? Look at that. Look at that question. If that wasn't a bright green light, I don't know what was. My fingers flew across the screen. Yes. Absolutely. Same time, same place. I'm buying you a burrito. Grinning emoji. Jessica. Okay, I'll be waiting. Smiley face. That little smiley face at the end made my heart tremble. It was over. Ethan Hayes, you were completely, utterly done for. This girl was on another level. A few simple texts, and she had me wrapped around her little finger. The next day, I was up before the sun, rummaging through my closet for my best outfit. I got to the burrito truck a full half hour early. When I saw her familiar figure appear, I felt my breath catch in my throat. She was wearing a simple white dress today, looking like an angel who'd just descended to earth. Morning, Ethan Hayes. She walked up to me, tilting her head back to look at me, her eyes sparkling. Morning. I quickly handed her the burrito I'd just bought, double ham and egg. This is for you. She took it, her fingers brushing against mine for a split second. It felt like an electric shock. Thank you. She took a small bite, then looked up at me and smiled, a tiny smudge of sauce at the corner of her mouth. It's delicious. The sunlight fell on her face, her long eyelashes like tiny fans. I saw that little smudge of sauce, and on some crazy impulse, I reached out and gently wiped it away with my thumb. The second I did it, we both froze. I could literally see the blush spread across her cheeks. Her eyes flickered, and she quickly looked down, murmuring, "Thank you." Holy crap. What did I just do? Ethan Hayes, you freaking creep. Panicked, I shoved my hand behind my back. The finger that had touched her lips felt like it was on fire. You're welcome. My voice cracked. The air suddenly felt thick and syrupy, a mix of the burrito's savory aroma and her intoxicating scent. We stood side by side, silently eating, neither of us speaking. But the charged atmosphere was so dense you could cut it with a knife. After walking her to her office building, I gathered my courage. So, are you free tonight? Want to get dinner? She looked at me, her eyes curving into crescents. Sure, but can I pick the place? I know a restaurant with amazing food. Absolutely, whatever you want. I nodded eagerly. Watching her walk into the building, I pinched my thigh. Hard. Pain. This wasn't a dream. That evening, I followed the address she sent me to a fancy restaurant that looked way out of my price range. The host at the door wore a tuxedo and gave me a look that sized me up and found me wanting. I glanced down at my best outfit and suddenly felt a little insecure. Jessica was already there, sitting at a table by the window. She'd changed into a champagne-colored slip dress that made her skin look even paler, almost like it was glowing. She rested her chin on her hand, watching the traffic outside, her profile as beautiful as a painting. I took a deep breath and walked over. Have you been waiting long? I asked, pulling out a chair. No, I just got here too. She turned her gaze from the window to me, her eyes full of warmth. You look very handsome tonight. My face flushed. Not as good as you. When it was time to order, I stared at the all-English menu, my brain seizing up. She seemed to notice my predicament and smoothly took over, speaking to the waiter in fluent English. Then she turned to me. Is medium rare okay for the steak? It's their specialty. Yes, whatever's good. I was a bobblehead. While we waited for our food, we talked about everything. Her voice was soft, her thoughts clear, and her knowledge on a range of topics was intimidatingly broad, but she never made me feel stupid. She asked about my job, listened to me complain about crazy clients and idiotic requests, and laughed so hard she had to wipe away tears. Ethan Hayes, you're so much fun, she said after she'd caught her breath, looking at me. Under the soft lights, her eyes looked like they were holding pools of water, sparkling and deep. The restaurant's soothing music created the perfect atmosphere. I looked at her face, so close to mine, at her full, red lips. A voice in my head was screaming, kiss her. Ethan, be a man and kiss her. I swallowed hard, my body leaning forward unconsciously. She looked back at me, her gaze unwavering, almost encouraging. Just as my lips were about to touch hers, she suddenly leaned back slightly, avoiding the kiss. A wave of disappointment washed over me. But in the next second, she reached out and gently took my hand, which was resting on the table. Her fingers were long and soft and cool to the touch. Too many people here, she whispered, her voice low and a little flirtatious, but her eyes were locked on mine like they had tiny hooks. Next time, let's find somewhere with no people. Okay. My brain exploded. All the blood in my body rushed south. Damn, this girl wasn't just good. She was a witch. A witch who knew exactly how to steal your soul. I squeezed her hand, my own grip tightening, my throat suddenly dry. Okay. In that moment, all I could focus on was my racing heart. I completely missed the flicker of absolute, possessive hunger that flashed in her eyes beneath that soft, smiling gaze. I honestly don't remember much about how I got home that night. All I remember is clutching my phone, the screen showing my chat with Jessica. The last message was from me. I'm home. She'd replied, good night, Ethan. She called me by my first name like that. I rolled around on my bed twice, clutching my phone, then buried my face in my pillow and let out a muffled scream of pure joy. My smile was stretched so wide it practically touched my ears. Was this it? Was I officially off the market? And with a girl who was basically a supermodel. The days that followed were like living in a dream. We had a standing date every morning for breakfast burritos. In the evenings, if I wasn't stuck working late, we'd have dinner, see a movie, or just walk around the city. She was, without a doubt, the most perfect girlfriend I could have ever imagined. Beyond being beautiful, she was sweet, thoughtful, and incredibly understanding. I told her I was a coder, and she actually understood some of the technical jargon and could even discuss it with me. While I complained about my idiot boss, she'd join in, her cheeks puffing out adorably as she came up with creative insults. But every now and then, I get this tiny, nagging feeling that something was off. For instance, we were watching a romance movie once, and the girl sitting next to us was sobbing her eyes out, making a bit of scene. I instinctively glanced over at her. I swear, it was just for a second. Suddenly, my hand was squeezed tight. It was Jessica, and she was gripping my hand with surprising strength. I turned to look at her. She was staring at the screen, her profile tense. Is she pretty? She asked in a low voice. It took me a second to process. I immediately pledged my loyalty. Not as pretty as you. 1,000 of her aren't worth a single strand of your hair. She finally turned her head, her eyes looking especially bright in the dim theater. She leaned in and gave me a quick, soft kiss on the corner of my mouth. You can only look at me. That kiss sent my heart soaring, and that little flicker of weirdness was instantly forgotten. My girlfriend was jealous. That meant she cared about me. Another time, a female friend from college, Sarah, was in town for a business trip and asked to grab dinner. I figured it was no big deal, so I told Jessica about it. She was snuggled up against me on the couch, watching TV. She didn't really react, just played with the drawstring on my hoodie. Just the two of you? She asked slowly. Yeah, she's on a tight schedule. Just a quick dinner to catch up. Oh, that was all she said. But while I was at dinner with Sarah, my phone practically vibrated off the table. Jessica, are you eating yet? Jessica, is the food any good? Jessica, what are you guys talking about? Jessica shared an article, 10 questions to test your boyfriend's loyalty. Jessica, Ethan, I miss you. Jessica, image. It was a selfie of her hugging the stuffed animal I'd won for her at a carnival, her eyes looking red and teary. I was trying to make awkward, small talk with my old friend while frantically texting Jessica back, assuring her it was purely platonic and trying to figure out how to end the dinner as quickly as possible. Finally, I made up an excuse and bailed early, grabbing an Uber straight to her apartment. When I got to her door, I pulled out my phone to see if she was still awake, but the door swung open before I could even text. She was standing there in her pajamas, her hair a mess, her eyes definitely red, looking like an abandoned kitten. She threw herself into my arms. What took you so long? She mumbled into my chest. I held her, my heart melting into a puddle. Any annoyance I'd felt about being interrogated was gone, replaced by a wave of protectiveness. This girl, she really depended on me. I'm sorry. I won't have dinner alone with anyone else again. Not guys, not girls. Only with you, okay? I cooed, stroking her back. She snuggled closer, then looked up, her eyes glistening. You promise? I promise. I couldn't help but lean down and kiss her forehead. She stood on her toes to meet my lips. The kiss started out soft and tentative, full of hurt feelings, but it quickly grew urgent and hot. Her arms wrapped around my neck, her body pressing against mine. The kiss was making me dizzy. I wrapped my arm around her waist, guiding her inside and kicking the door shut behind me. My back was against the cool metal of the door. Her warm, soft body was in my arms, and her fiery kiss was clouding my judgment. I felt my self-control starting to evaporate. Jessica. I breathed her name, my voice unsteady. She pulled back just enough for our foreheads to touch, our breaths mingling. Her voice was a soft, seductive whisper. Ethan, remember what I said? About finding somewhere with no people? I swallowed hard, looking at her so close. Her beautiful eyes reflected only me, hazy and full of passion. This place, she murmured, her fingers tracing a line down my throat, sending a shiver through me, seems pretty empty. Crap, who could possibly resist this? The last thread of my self-control snapped. I lowered my head and crushed my lips against hers, the ones I'd been dreaming about for months. Introvert? Consequences? To hell with it all. For the rest of my life, if I was going to be trapped, I was glad it was by her. After that night of deeply connecting at her place, my relationship with Jessica went into hyperdrive. We basically moved in together. Well, she moved in with me. Her reasoning was flawless. Ethan, your place is closer to my office, she'd said, clinging to my arm and batting her eyelashes. Besides, I want you to be the first person I see when I wake up every morning. How could I argue with that? My little one-bedroom apartment was instantly transformed. Living together was amazing, truly. I got to fall asleep holding my beautiful, sweet-smelling girlfriend and wake up to her face on the pillow next to me. I come home from a long day of coding to a hot meal. It was the dream life for a corporate drone like me. And Jessica was definitely affectionate. She'd wrap her arms around my waist from behind while I was cooking, pressing her cheek against my back. She'd curl up in my lap while I was gaming, scrolling through TikTok on my phone with the volume turned down low. At night, she had to use my arm as a pillow. If I moved even an inch, she'd make little whimpering noises and burrow deeper into my arms, like a kitten who couldn't bear to be alone. I was so happy I was practically bubbling over. This was it. This was the life. But sometimes the fine, silky threads of that affection started to feel more like a spider's web, quietly wrapping around me. First, it was my social life. I used to hang out with my buddies on the weekends sometimes, grab some wings, watch the game. Now, Ethan, are you going out? Every time I started to change, she'd be sitting on the edge of the bed, hugging a pillow, her eyes wide and pleading. She wouldn't say no. She'd just watch me. And it made me feel guilty as hell. Just go in and watch the game with Mark and the guys. I'll be back quick, I tried to explain. Oh, she'd say, looking down, her voice muffled. It's so sunny out, you'll get a sunburn. And what if you get hurt playing? I'd be so worried. The first couple of times I was flattered. She was just concerned about me. But after a while, I started to get it. And if I actually went, my phone would be flooded with texts, ranging from "I miss you" to "Were there any other girls with your friends?" to a selfie of her with red-rimmed eyes, looking like she'd just been crying. How was I supposed to have a good time with that going on? Eventually, after I made up a few lame excuses, Mark and the guys just stopped asking. The group chat would light up with jokes. Dude, Ethan's gone MIA since he got a girlfriend. Whipped. I'd stare at the screen, a little bummed out, but then I'd turn and see Jessica bringing me a plate of cut-up fruit, and I'd swallow the feeling down. Whatever. Friends weren't as nice as having a girlfriend anyway. Then it was my phone. Her interest in my phone was intense. She wasn't obvious about it, like demanding to see my texts. It was more insidious. We'd be watching a movie, and she'd casually take my phone. Ethan, let me just look up who that actor is. Then her fingers would just happen to swipe through a few other apps. I'd be in a shower, and when I came out, she'd be playing a game on my phone with the screen left on my messenger chat list. Before bed, she liked to use my phone to browse Amazon, claiming she was looking for things you might need, which was just an excuse to scroll through my Facebook feed and like posts. One time, Sarah, my old college friend, messaged me with a technical question. I was in the shower. I came out to see Jessica holding my phone. The screen lit up on my chat with Sarah. She hadn't opened the message, just stared at the preview, and her face was dark. Who's that? She asked, her voice soft. Just that friend from last time. She has a question about some code. I explained quickly, my stomach twisting into a knot. Oh, she handed the phone back to me and didn't say another word. But that night, she slept with her back to me. When I tried to put my arm around her, she was stiff. It took a lot of effort. Kissing, hugging, cajoling, and promising that I would never, ever have unnecessary contact with any other woman unless it was absolutely for work, before she finally turned over and curled up in my arms. Ethan, she whispered, her voice thick, I'm just so scared of losing you. And just like that, my heart softened again. She was right. She just loved me so much. She was insecure. A broke coder like me, with no money or connections, being treated like I was the most precious thing in the world. What did I have to complain about? She even started taking over my wardrobe. Ethan, the collar on this t-shirt is all stretched out. Let's not wear this anymore. The color of these jeans isn't flattering. They make your legs look short. I bought you some new clothes. See if you like them. The clothes she bought were all simple, high-quality basics. I had to admit, they made me look a lot better. But my old t-shirts with loud graphics and my ripped jeans started to disappear from my closet. When I asked, she'd either say they were old, so I threw them out, or I put them in storage. It was a little annoying, but watching her excitedly pick out my outfits, her eyes shining, I pushed the feeling down. It was a good thing my girlfriend wanted to dress me up, right? It wasn't until I came home from work one day and found that my succulent, the one I'd had for 3 years, the one that was as low maintenance as I was gone. That thing was tough. I'd forget to water it for weeks, and it would still be alive. Oh, that's succulent. Jessica was arranging some new flowers, lilies of the valley, in a vase. They were delicate and white, beautiful and fragile. I saw it was all withered and ugly, so I took care of it for you. Look at these lilies. Don't they look so much better in our place? She smiled at me, her expression pure and innocent. I stared at the empty spot on the windowsill where my plant used to be, and for the first time, a real, sharp sense of unease pricked at me. It wasn't just a plant. It felt like a part of me was being gently, lovingly stripped away in the name of her love. And the scariest part? I was getting used to this gentle confinement. Damn, Ethan Hayes, you were really starting to become an introvert. That flicker of unease from the missing succulent was like a ripple on the water. Before it could spread, Jessica smothered it with another wave of affection. She got even better to me, so good it was almost unsettling. When I woke up, the toothpaste was already on my toothbrush. When I came home at night, the shower water was always the perfect temperature. I casually mentioned once that the coffee at work tasted like dishwater, and the next day, a professional-grade espresso machine appeared in our kitchen, and she started making me a different kind of hand-poured coffee every morning. The worst part was she got even clingier and even better at seducing me. I'd be at my computer at night, debugging some code, and she'd curl up on the sofa nearby, hugging a pillow, just quietly watching me. Her gaze was so intense, it was like I was the only thing left in the world. When I'd finally typed the last line of code and turn around, she'd be there, wearing that silk nightgown, walking towards me barefoot. She'd slide right onto my lap and wrap her arms around my neck. "Finished, Ethan?" Her voice was soft and sleepy, her breath warm against my ear. Yeah, my throat was tight. My hands automatically went to her waist. It was so small I felt like I could wrap one hand all the way around it. "Tired?" Her nose nuzzled against my cheek, like a little animal seeking comfort. "Never tired when I see you." Cheesy lines like that just rolled off my tongue now. She let out a low laugh, then tilted her head up and kissed me. It wasn't a rushed, passionate kiss. It was slow and lingering, a series of soft presses against my lips, her tongue occasionally tracing the seam, like she was savoring a delicacy. The kiss made me feel hot all over. My hands started to wander over her back, feeling the warmth of her skin through the smooth fabric. "Ethan," she murmured between kisses, her eyes wet and shining as she looked at me. "I love you so much. You can't leave me." At moments like this, it didn't matter that she'd thrown out my plant. She could have thrown out all my possessions, and I probably wouldn't have been able to get angry. I'd just hold her tighter, answer her kiss with a deeper one, until we were both breathless and lost in each other. But deep down, that feeling of being suffocated hadn't completely disappeared. It was like a snowball, quietly getting bigger. The turning point came one weekend. My best friend from college, Chris, was in town for a one-day training seminar and was desperate to see me. I hesitated for a long time, looking at Jessica, who was sitting next to me, peeling grapes and feeding them to me. I finally forced myself to speak. "Jessica, Chris is here, just for this afternoon. I was thinking of grabbing coffee with him. 2 hours max. Is that okay?" My voice was so cautious, I didn't even recognize it. Her hand paused. Her long eyelashes cast a shadow on her cheeks. She didn't look at me. "Okay, go ahead," she said, her voice flat. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I quickly made a promise. "I'll be back as fast as I can. I'll bring you a cake from that bakery you love." She didn't say anything, just popped another peeled grape into my mouth. Her fingertips were cold. Seeing Chris was great. He was the same as always, loud and boisterous. We found a coffee shop and started catching up. He looked at my new, understatedly expensive outfit and whistled. "Damn, Ethan, look at you. Going for the sophisticated look now? That's not cheap, is it? Your girl dress you up?" I gave a weak smile and changed the subject. We hadn't been talking for 30 minutes before my phone started buzzing. I didn't even have to look to know who it was. "Jessica, Ethan, are you there yet? Jessica, is the coffee good? Jessica." Image the lilies at home look a little sad. What do I do? I'm so bad at this. "Jessica, I miss you." One after another. Chris watched my screen light up again and again, a smirk on his face. "Whoa, she's checking up on you. That's intense." I felt my face get hot, but I tried to play it cool. "Nah, she's just a little clingy." "Clingy's good. Means she cares," Chris said with a laugh, but his eyes told a different story. I looked down to text Jessica back, trying to soothe her, telling her I'd be home soon. That suffocating feeling was back. I felt like a kite on a string. I could fly, but the string was always in someone else's hand. After another 10 minutes, I couldn't take the constant messages and my own anxiety anymore. I stood up and said goodbye to Chris. As he walked me out, he clapped me on the shoulder. "Hey man, as long as you're happy." I could tell there was more he wanted to say. When I got home, I opened the door to find Jessica sitting on the sofa, hugging a pillow, her eyes red as if she'd been crying. When she saw me, she didn't jump up like she usually did. She just looked at me, her expression a mix of hurt and Accusation? My stomach dropped. What's wrong? Are the lilies okay? I asked, quickly taking off my shoes and walking over. She didn't answer my question about the flowers. She just asked quietly, was the coffee good? Did you have a nice time with your friend? It was whatever, I said, trying to put my arm around her. She subtly moved away, looking down, her voice choked with emotion. You were gone for so long. I was all alone here. I was so scared. Ethan, do you think I'm annoying? That I'm too controlling? Looking at her red-rimmed eyes and her fragile expression, all the frustration and resentment I'd built up at the coffee shop crumbled away. All I felt was a pang of guilt and a desperate need to make it better. No, of course not. I pulled her into my arms. This time, she didn't resist, just leaned against my chest and started to cry softly. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have been gone so long and left you here alone. From now on, I'll go out less. I'll stay home with you more, okay? She looked up from my chest, her eyes shimmering with tears. Really? Really? Cross my heart. I leaned down and kissed the tears from her eyes. They were salty, but they made my heart swell. She smiled through her tears and met my lips with her own. The kiss tasted of salt and a little bitterness, but it was incredibly tender. She clutched my shirt, as if she was afraid I'd disappear. I kissed her back, a storm of emotions churning inside me. Was this sweet? Yes. Was it suffocating? Maybe. A little. I felt the invisible collar around my neck tighten ever so gently. Damn, this was it. I was never getting away. After the incident with Chris, I definitely started to behave better. Not because I was scared of her, but because I couldn't stand to see her with those red eyes. The second she started crying, it was like she cast a spell on me, and all my principles went out the window. But people are weird. Sometimes, the more you suppress something, the more it grows in the dark. I started to master the art of reporting in. Jessica, I'm taking out the trash. Jessica, going to the convenience store for a pack of smokes. I'll be back in 5. Jessica, Mark has an urgent work thing. I'm just going to be in the study for a quick video call. I gave her every detail, unprompted. Time, place, people involved. It was like writing a daily report for my boss. And Jessica loved it. Every time I reported in, she'd give me a sweet smile or a quick kiss and say, "Good boy, Ethan." On the outside, I soaked up the praise. On the inside, it felt a little pathetic. This wasn't a relationship. It was like I'd adopted a 24/7 human-shaped surveillance drone with an emotional blackmail feature. Occasionally, I'd test the invisible boundaries. When I took out the trash, I'd linger by the flower beds for an extra 2 minutes, have a cigarette, and just watch the birds fly by, doing nothing, just savoring the feeling of not being watched. Another time, on a weekend, I told her I had an emergency at work that I had to handle online, and I needed quiet, so I shut myself in the study. In reality, there was no emergency. I just wanted to play a couple of rounds of video game by myself, with my headphones on, where I could just slash and shoot without worrying about anyone's feelings. It worked for about half an hour. Then the study door creaked open. Jessica came in with a plate of sliced fruit, a look of perfect concern on her face. "Ethan, is it a big problem? Are you tired? Have some fruit and take a break." She walked over to my side and casually leaned over to look at my screen. I frantically minimized the game window, revealing the code editor I had open in the background. "It's fine. Almost done," I said, trying to sound calm. She didn't call me out. She just picked up a slice of apple with a toothpick and held it to my lips, her eyes flicking from my screen back to my face. She smiled. "Good. You look so handsome when you're focused on work." I chewed the apple. It tasted like cardboard. A thin layer of sweat broke out on my back. That glance at my screen was definitely a check. Did she know? How could she know? The study was practically soundproof. That feeling of being seen through gave me the creeps. What was even more unsettling was that I started censoring myself. I'd see a funny video I wanted to share with the guys, but just as my finger hovered over the share button, the thought that Jessica might not like it would flash in my mind, and I'd cancel it. My favorite streamer would upload a new video, and I wouldn't dare play it out loud. I put on my headphones, turned the volume down to a whisper like I was committing a crime. Even when I was chatting with a male colleague on our work messenger about something completely unrelated to work, I'd subconsciously wonder, if Jessica saw this, what would she think? Damn it. "Ethan Hayes, when did you become such a coward?" That night, Jessica was asleep, her head on my arm, her breathing even. She looked like an angel, but my chest felt tight. I loved her, there was no doubt about that. She was beautiful. She was good to me. She only had eyes for me. At first, that feeling of being so needed, so possessed, was a huge ego boost. It made me feel secure. But now, that security had soured. It was a form of invisible pressure, suffocating me. I gently pulled my arm out from under her and sat up. Want to go to the balcony for some air? The moment I moved, she stirred. She blindly reached out, and when her hand found my arm, she gripped it tight, mumbling sleepily, "Ethan, where are you going?" Her voice was laced with a hint of panic. "Nowhere, just getting a drink of water," I said, patting her hand. "Oh," she murmured, but she didn't let go. Instead, she scooted closer, wrapping her arms around my arm again like it was a lifeline, and quickly fell back asleep. I looked out the window at the city lights, then back down at the woman clinging to me. The frustration and suffocation I'd felt moments before were replaced by something more complex. Helplessness, pity, and a sense of resignation. I sighed and lay back down, pulling her closer. She let out a contented sigh in her sleep and snuggled deeper. Well, that was that. This sweet leash was on for good. My company organized a team-building event, a 2-day, 1-night trip to some resort in the suburbs. I had to report this to Jessica a week in advance. The process was excruciating. "Do you have to go? Can't you take a sick day?" she asked, her fingers expertly tying my tie, her voice tight. "It's a team thing. I can't really get out of it. Besides, I wanted to say that I needed some social interaction, but I swallowed the words. It's just one night. I'll be back the next afternoon." She didn't say anything. She finished with the tie, smoothed down my collar, then looked up at me, her eyes slowly turning red. "But I'll miss you. I'll be scared all by myself." There was again. I sighed internally and pulled her into a practice hug. "I'll miss you too. I promise. The second I get there, I'll send you my location. I'll give you updates on everything, and we'll video chat at night. Okay?" It took a lot of convincing, a promise to bring her back a limited edition perfume, and a vow that the entire following weekend would be dedicated to her before she finally agreed. The morning I left, she was up even earlier than I was, packing my bag, muttering constantly, "Did you pack bug spray? There are a lot of mosquitoes in the suburbs. Don't turn the AC down too low at night. Don't drink too much. It's bad for you. Text me when you get there." I agreed to everything. Watching her fuss over me, the little bit of excitement I'd felt about getting a temporary release was crushed by a heavy sense of guilt. Was I being selfish? The team building itself was pretty boring. Just eating, singing karaoke, and playing some dumb games. But for me, it was a taste of a long-lost freedom. I could joke around with my colleagues without constantly checking my phone, without having to weigh every word to see if it would upset her. Of course, I didn't slack on my duties. I sent her my location, took pictures, and called her on video chat right on schedule. In the video, she was in her pajamas, hugging my pillow, with our bedroom in the background. Everything seemed normal. She just kept asking what time I would be home the next day. After we hung up, I breathed a sigh of relief. I thought I'd made it through. The next afternoon, on the bus back to the city, my phone started vibrating nonstop. It was Jessica. "Jessica, Ethan, where are you?" "Jessica, I made your favorite sweet and sour pork ribs." "Jessica, image, look, I bought new pajamas. Are they pretty?" The picture was of her in a black lace nightgown. The straps were dangerously thin, making her skin look even paler. The photo was cut off just below her collarbone, but the hint of curves was enough to make my throat go dry. "Damn, who could resist that?" I quickly replied. "Almost there. Stuck in traffic. I'm dying to get home. The pajamas are amazing. So hot." Drooling emoji. I even proudly show my colleague next to me. "Look at my girlfriend. Isn't she the best?" My colleague glanced at my screen, his expression complicated. He let out a dry laugh. "Hey, yeah, she's very thoughtful." I didn't catch the meaning in his words then. All I could think about was pork ribs and that black lace nightgown. When I got to my front door, I took a deep breath, composed myself, and prepared for the onslaught of her "I missed you so much" affection. The second I put my key in the lock, the door swung open from the inside. Jessica was standing there, a smile on her face. But the smile was a little too bright. "Ethan, you're back." She threw herself into my arms, her hug so tight I could barely breathe. "Yeah, I'm back." I held her, instinctively leaning down to kiss her, but she turned her head, pulling me inside. Hurry, wash your hands and eat. The ribs are getting cold. At the dinner table, she was unusually enthusiastic, constantly putting food on my plate, asking if the team building was fun, what we did. I told her the safe parts, but a knot of anxiety tightened in my stomach. It was too normal. So normal it was abnormal. After dinner, I offered to do the dishes. As I was rinsing the plates, she came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist, pressing her cheek against my back. Ethan, she said, her voice muffled. Did you win your game last night? My hand slipped. The plate almost fell into the sink. After the video call last night, I had played a few rounds of an online game with some colleagues. How did she know? Just played a couple of games, I said, trying to stay calm. Oh, she said. She let go of me, walked around to face me, and looked up, still smiling. But her eyes were turning cold. With that new girl from the front desk? She's really good at that game, isn't she? You even complimented her. My brain buzzed. She even knew about that. The girl from the front desk was just someone a colleague invited. She was good, and I had casually said, "Wow, you're amazing." How the hell could she know that? How? How did you know? My voice changed. Jessica didn't answer. She just reached into my jeans pocket and pulled out my phone. She unlocked it with her own fingerprint, then opened an app. It showed my game history from last night, complete with a recording of the voice chat with my teammates. The blood drained from my face. You're spying on my phone. A wave of humiliation and anger washed over me. Spying? She tilted her head, repeating the word. The smile on her face finally vanished, replaced by a cold, obsessive look I had never seen before. Ethan, I just want to know everything about you. When you're not with me, I get scared. I want to know what you're doing, who you're with, if you're happy. What's wrong with that? As she spoke, her eyes welled up with tears, making her look vulnerable and alluring in that sexy nightgown. Damn it. This again, looking at her tears, my anger deflated like a popped balloon, leaving only a deep sense of exhaustion and a flicker of fear. She wasn't crazy. She was just. Her way of loving was terrifying. Jessica, we can't be like this. I tried to reason with her. This is my privacy. I need some space. Space. She cut me off, taking a step forward, backing me up against the sink. She looked up at me, a tear finally rolling down her cheek. My whole world is you. You're all my space. Why do you need other people? Why do you need space that I don't know about? Is there something wrong with me? Tell me, and I'll change. She was getting hysterical, her nails digging into my arms. It's not you, it's me, okay? I yelled back, losing control. I just want to breathe. Just for a second. After I yelled, we both froze. The only sound in the living room was her soft sobbing. I looked at her tears, my heart aching. What the hell was I doing? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, I pulled her into a fierce hug. I ignored her slight struggle and crushed my lips against hers. The kiss tasted of sweet pork ribs and salty tears. It wasn't pleasant. It was almost violent. I was venting, confirming something. At first, she was stiff, but she quickly melted under my kiss and started to respond, her arms wrapping around my neck tighter than ever before. When the kiss ended, we were both gasping for air. She buried her face in my chest, sobbing. Ethan, don't be mad. I was wrong. I just love you too much. I'm scared you'll leave me. I stroked her back, looking out the window at the dark night, feeling like I had fallen into an endless abyss. I won't leave you, I heard myself say, my voice hoarse. From now on, if you want to look at my phone, just look. She looked up, her tear-streaked face instantly glowing with a joy and satisfaction so intense it was as if I had given her the world. She stood on her toes and kissed me again, this time tender and lingering. Ethan, you're so good to me, she murmured between kisses. I looked into her eyes, so full of love and dependence, and felt a chill spread through me. The last thread had snapped, and I had just locked myself into this beautiful, tear-filled, inescapable cage. After the whole phone spying incident, my relationship with Jessica entered a strange new normal. I gave up fighting. I was like a fish on a frying pan. Whichever way she flipped me, I sizzled. Phone password? She'd already registered her fingerprint. Chat history? Help yourself. Location tracking? On 24/7. She got more anxious than I did if my battery dropped below 20%. Hanging out with my friends? I quit cold turkey. Needed to talk to a female colleague for work. I dropped my girlfriend into the conversation within the first 3 sentences, like a magic spell. She was very pleased with my new enlightenment. She became even more affectionate and clingy, taking care of me with meticulous detail. But I knew something had changed. For instance, she started buying me things. Lots of things. Not just replacing my old clothes, but truly expensive stuff. Things a guy like me wouldn't even dare to look at before. A watch that cost more than my annual salary. When I asked where she got the money, she just bat her innocent eyes. Oh, it's a fake. Just for fun. But the weight, the feel of it was no fake. A belt with a logo so discreet, I didn't even recognize it. But wearing it made me feel like I stood up straighter. A quick search of the price almost gave me a heart attack. The craziest thing was when I came home from work one day to find a brand new black sports car parked downstairs. Its sleek lines made it look like a panther ready to pounce. I was admiring it, wondering which rich neighbor was showing off, when Jessica bounced up to me, dangling a car key. Ethan, do you like it? It's for you. I looked at the key in her hand, the one with the Trident logo, and my knees went weak. I almost fell to the ground. Jessica, is this a Maserati? My voice was trembling. Did you win the lottery? Or did you sell my kidney? She giggled, pressing the key into my hand. Don't be silly. Well, my family has some money. I've been saving up for a long time. I wanted to surprise you. She clung to my arm. You work so hard, taking the bus and the subway every day. It breaks my heart to see it. From now on, you can drive to work, okay? I held the cold key. It felt like a branding iron. Surprise? This was a shock. I looked at her, smiling so sweetly, and for the first time, a real fear about her family with some money took root in my heart. This was not something an ordinary upper-middle-class family could afford. No, this is too much. I can't take it. I tried to get the key back. The smile on her face vanished. Her eyes started to well up, her lips turned down, and her voice cracked. Why not? You're my boyfriend. I want to be good to you. Is that wrong? Do you still see me as an outsider? Do you think my things are dirty? Here we go again. I looked at the car, gleaming in the sunset, then back at her, on the verge of breakdown. My head was pounding. If I took it, I feel like a kept man, a gigolo. If I didn't, there was no way I was getting out of this without a major scene. She'd probably cry herself unconscious in my arms. I gritted my teeth, tightened my grip on the key, and forced a smile that felt more painful than crying. I'll take it. I love it. Thank you, baby. I'm just so surprised. I couldn't process it. She instantly beamed, tears forgotten, and jumped up to kiss me on the cheek. I knew you'd love it. Come on, try it out. She practically shoved me into the driver's seat. The interior was luxurious, the leather seats smelling of money. When I started the engine, the low rumble was like a beast's roar, making all the neighbors turn to look. I drove the beast, with an excited Jessica giving directions, aimlessly around the city. The neon lights blurred past the windows, but I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles. This car was like a gilded cage, more spacious, more comfortable, but also stronger, leaving me with nowhere to hide. At a red light, I couldn't help but ask, Jessica, what does your family do? She was fiddling with the drawstring of my hoodie. She looked up and gave me a sweet smile. Oh, just a small business. Don't think too much, Ethan. What's mine is yours. She leaned over and planted a soft kiss on my lips, her familiar, sweet scent now feeling a little suffocating. Aren't we happy like this? She whispered against my lips, her eyes full of dependence and an undeniable control. I looked at her so close, beautiful, rich, and completely obsessed with me. She had bound me with the most beautiful chains. What could I say? I pulled at the corner of my mouth, reached up, and stroked her hair, my voice hoarse. Yeah, we're great. Yeah, just great. A sparrow with broken wings, finally in a golden cage worthy of its captor. Damn. In the end, I didn't dare drive that Maserati to work every day. It was too flashy. I was afraid my colleagues would think I'd made a fortune in some illegal enterprise overnight. So, most of the time, it just sat parked in the lot of my rundown apartment complex, a complete mismatch with its surroundings, like a fallen aristocrat in a slum, enduring the curious and speculative glances of my neighbors. Jessica was a little pouty about it. Ethan, cars are meant to be driven. It's such a waste to just let it sit there. I had to coax her. Baby, my driving skills don't do this car justice. Let me get more practice with our old car first. In reality, our old car, a Lexus, had been sent for a full overhaul by her at some point and was now practically brand new. I felt like a monkey forced into a fancy costume, completely out of my element. Just as I was trying to get used to the dizziness of this sudden class upgrade, something even more intense came along. One night, Jessica was curled up in my arms, watching some reality show, when she casually brought it up. Ethan, my parents want to meet you this weekend. Just a casual dinner. My brain short-circuited. The CPU was overheating. Meet the parents, in my current state, driving a Maserati, wearing designer clothes she bought, living in a rented apartment she paid to redecorate, to meet her parents who run a small business. That was like going into an exam naked and still trying to cheat. So soon? I'm not ready. I started stammering. Jessica looked up, her hand drawing circles on my chest, her eyes wide and pleading. You don't want to go? I already told them. They really want to meet the handsome guy who's completely stolen their daughter's heart. Here it was again. That look, that tone of voice. It was a weapon of mass destruction designed specifically for me. It's not that I don't want to. It's just, I rack my brain for an excuse. I'm afraid I'll embarrass you. Look at me, no family background, no money, just a regular coder. I don't care, she cut me off, propping herself up to look me in the eye. I like you for who you are. What does that have to do with them? Besides, she suddenly gave a mischievous smile, leaning in to whisper in my ear, her breath warm. As long as you're good in bed, that's all that matters, right? I was speechless. This girl's dirty jokes were getting more and more unpredictable. In the end, under her threat of if you don't go, I'll cry until I'm dehydrated and end up in the hospital, I reluctantly agreed. Damn it, might as well face the music. That weekend, she spent 2 hours getting me ready. From head to toe, from my boxers to my socks, everything was something she'd bought. Looking at the handsome, almost unrecognizable man in the mirror, I had a strange feeling that the real Ethan Hayes was being slowly dismantled and replaced with a version that Jessica preferred. The dinner was at a top-tier private club with no sign on the door. Inside, it was a different world with rock gardens, streams, and winding corridors. The waiters moved silently, like characters from a movie. Her parents were already in the private room. Her dad, whose name was surprisingly plain, David Miller, had eyes as sharp as a hawk's. When he looked at me, I felt like I was being x-rayed, my worth assessed in an instant. Her mom, elegant and well-preserved, wore a designer dress and a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. My palms were sweating, my legs felt weak. I respectfully greeted them. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, it's nice to meet you. Jessica sat down close to me, clinging to my arm, as if to say he's mine. The meal was torture. I barely tasted the food. I was too busy answering her dad's casual but probing questions. What do your parents do? Regular workers, they were laid off years ago. Are they in good health? They're fine. My mom would probably faint with joy if she knew I was dating a rich girl. What are your plans for the future? Work hard, make money, and be good to Jessica. What else? Wait for you to throw me in a river. Her mom would occasionally chime in, asking how Jessica was doing, if she was comfortable, her words implying, my daughter is suffering with you. The whole time, Jessica defended me. For every one thing I said, she'd add 3 more, praising me to the skies. According to her, I was a misunderstood genius with unlimited potential who was hopelessly devoted to her. I went to the restroom at one point, and as I was coming back, I overheard hushed voices from the room. Her dad. This is ridiculous. What do you see in him? Jessica, her voice choked with tears. I don't care. I want him. I don't want anyone else. Her mom, trying to mediate. David, calm down. If our daughter likes him. I stood outside the door, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Humiliation, anger, but mostly a deep sense of powerlessness. Jessica was fighting for me in her own way, but all I could do was stand by and let it happen. After dinner, her parents left in a Rolls-Royce. I watched the car drive away, thinking, that's one hell of a small business. On the way back, I drove the flashy Maserati in silence. Jessica seemed to sense my mood. Ethan, are you upset? My parents. They can be a little blunt. Don't take it to heart. I shook my head and forced a smile. No, they were fine. They were fine. The fact that they didn't tell me to get lost on the spot was a testament to their good manners. She leaned over, resting her head on my shoulder. Ethan, don't be scared. You have me. No one can take you away from me. No one can separate us. Her hand gently covered mine on the steering wheel, her touch possessive and unwavering. I looked at the road ahead, lit up by the headlights. I felt like this powerful car, with no control over its own direction, forced to follow the path she had laid out. Where did the road end? I didn't know. All I knew was that I was probably never getting out of this gilded cage. After meeting her parents, I was in a funk for days. Not angry, just suffocated. I felt like a defective product on a shelf, inspected and judged, only kept because the customer was stubbornly attached to it. Jessica must have noticed my mood because she went out of her way to cheer me up. Her cooking got more elaborate, her affection more frequent, and at night, she was especially passionate. It was her way of proving, I don't care what they think, I love you. What could I say? I just played along, pushing down my discomfort, telling myself, Ethan, stop being so dramatic. How many guys would kill to be in this golden cage? Life seemed to return to its previous calm. Until that afternoon. I was slacking off at work, chatting online with a friend about our college days. He sent an old, blurry graduation photo. I was squinting at the tiny faces, trying to find myself, when my phone was snatched out of my hand. I jumped, looking up to see Jessica standing by my desk, her face pale, her eyes glued to the screen. What are you doing here? I stammered, my heart sinking. She never came to my office without telling me first. She ignored me, her fingers zooming in on the photo, her nails scraping against the screen. She stopped on a girl with a ponytail, smiling brightly. My ex-girlfriend from college, Megan. We hadn't spoken in years. Who is she? Jessica looked up at me, her voice soft, but her eyes were like ice. My scalp tingled. I quickly explained, just a college classmate. I haven't talked to her in years. A classmate? She smirked, a chilling expression. The way she's looking at you doesn't seem like she's just a classmate. Damn it. The photo was so blurry. Her own mother probably wouldn't recognize her. How could she see her expression? Really just a classmate. We dated for a bit, but we broke up a long time ago. We haven't spoken since graduation. I reached for my phone. She pulled it back, clutching it to her chest, taking a step back. Her eyes welled up with tears, but she stubbornly held them back. Ethan Hayes, you lied to me. Her voice trembled. You never told me. Are you still in love with her? Am I just her replacement? What is she talking about? My entire relationship with Megan was less dramatic than a single month with her. A replacement for what? No, of course not. We're done. It's ancient history. I tried to get closer. Don't come near me, she snapped, the tears finally falling. Why did you keep her picture? Why were you talking to your friend about her? Do you regret it? Do you want to go back to her? I was speechless. My friend sent the picture. I didn't save it. He brought her up. My colleagues were starting to stare, whispering to each other. My face was burning with a mix of anger and embarrassment. Jessica, let's go home and talk about this, okay? There are too many people here. I pleaded, my voice low. She bit her lip, her eyes full of hurt, anger, and a crazed stubbornness. She didn't say another word, just shoved my phone back into my hand and ran out of the office. I stood there, frozen, feeling the curious stares from all around me, wishing the ground would swallow me whole. On the way home, my mind was a mess. I opened the door to a dark apartment. Jessica, I called out tentatively. No answer. I fumbled for the light switch. When the light came on, I saw her curled up in a corner of the sofa, hugging her knees, her head buried. She looked like an abandoned child. On the floor were shredded pieces of paper. There were old love letters I had written to my ex-girlfriend, letters I had completely forgotten existed. I had no idea how she found them. My head spun. She had gone through my old stuff. She had dug up my ancient history. Did you go through my old hard drive? My voice was shaking. She looked up, her face tear-streaked, her eyes red and swollen, but unervingly bright. She seemed strangely calm. Ethan, she said, her voice hoarse. I deleted everything about her. I looked at her, at the shredded paper at her feet, and a chill ran down my spine. This wasn't jealousy. This was a purge, an eradication. Are you crazy? That was years ago. I couldn't help but raise my voice. I'm not crazy. She shot up, walking towards me, her eyes wild and fragile. Your past, your present, your future. They can only have me. Anything or anyone that could possibly take your attention away from me shouldn't exist. She grabbed my shirt, her grip surprisingly strong. Ethan Hayes, tell me, do you love me? Do you only love me? Will you only ever look at me? Looking at her, on the verge of a breakdown, all the words I wanted to say got stuck in my throat. How do you reason with a forest fire? I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and when I opened them again, I pulled her into a fierce hug. I ignored her struggles and crushed my lips against hers. The kiss was salty with tears, a punishment and a possession, rough and desperate. I was confirming her existence and my own belonging. At first, she beat against my back, but she quickly melted under my kiss, responding with even more intensity, as if she wanted to consume me whole. When the kiss ended, we were both gasping for air. She buried her face in my chest, repeatedly whispering, "Ethan, are you mine? Only mine." I held her, looking at the shredded love letters on the floor. I felt like a part of me had been torn apart with them, then reassembled, stamped with her brand. Yes, I heard my own tired, resigned voice say, "I'm yours, only yours." She finally quieted down, a contented cat, snuggling against me. The fire was out for now, but I knew that its searing heat had been branded into my very bones, and I had no idea what would set it off next. After the blow-up over the old photos and letters, things settled into a strange, tense calm. It was like a thunderstorm had passed, violent and destructive, but quick. In its wake, Jessica became incredibly gentle, almost cautious. She never mentioned that night again, as if the shredded letters had never existed. She was better to me than ever, almost as if she were atoning for something. In the morning, even the toothpaste was squeezed more perfectly onto my brush. If I worked late, the constant barrage of texts stopped, replaced by scheduled check-ins and pictures of food, with a simple "don't work too hard. I'm waiting for you." But this quiet made me even more uneasy. It felt like the unnerving calm before a hurricane, or like something thick and sticky was silently spreading through the air. My social circle continued to shrink at an alarming rate. Before, I could at least chat with colleagues on our work messenger. Now, every time I opened the app, I felt like a pair of eyes was staring at my back. I type and delete until all that was left was a dry "got it" or "okay." My group chat with my friends went completely silent. I don't know if they had all tacitly agreed to stop contacting me, or if Jessica had found some gentle way to silence them. I felt like I was living on a deserted island, with the only shipping lane leading directly to Jessica Miller. She started talking about forever more often. When we'd look at the stars, she'd point to the brightest one and say, "Ethan, we have to be like that star, together forever." When it rained, she'd snuggle into my arms and listen to the sound. "This is nice. You can't go out. You can only be with me. I wish it was like this forever." Even during our most intimate moments, at the peak of passion, she'd whisper in my ear over and over, "You're mine. Always. You can't escape." The word "forever" coming from her lips sounded like a sweet curse, and it made my heart clench. One weekend, she insisted we go for a walk. Not to the mall, but down a series of quiet old streets, until we stopped in front of a stylish tattoo parlor. My stomach dropped. I had a bad feeling about this. "Jessica, what are we doing here?" She turned to look at me, her eyes sparkling with a mix of innocence and stubborn determination. "Ethan, let's get tattoos." My scalp tingled. "Thought. Tattoos. Yes." She nodded vigorously, grabbing my hand, her voice excited and firm. "Let's get a matching mark, something that belongs only to us. That way, you'll be mine forever." I looked at the cold, sharp instruments and the bold, colorful designs inside the shop, and my stomach churned. I was afraid of needles. A tattoo? I don't think so. It'll hurt. And it's not good for my job, my company. I try to make excuses. The light in her eyes instantly dimmed. Her lips turned down, and her eyes started to well up. "You still don't want to? Is it because you're still thinking about someone else? You won't even get a mark from me." There was again her ultimate weapon. I looked at the curious passers-by, then back at her, on the verge of a breakdown. My head was pounding. A tattoo? This wasn't just a tattoo. This was a brand of ownership. "No." "Jessica, listen to me." I fumbled, trying to calm her down. "I don't want to listen." She pulled her hand away, tears streaming down her face. "You just don't love me. You don't want to have a permanent connection with me. I get it. I'll just go. She turned to leave. I grabbed her and pulled her back into my arms, holding her tight. In the face of her hot tears, my last bit of resistance crumbled. Forget it, Ethan. Just give in. A leash is a leash. A brand is a brand. What's the difference? Fine. I'll get one, I said through gritted teeth. Whatever you want, wherever you want it. She instantly looked up, smiling through her tears. Really? Ethan, you're the best. She stood on her toes, gave me a hard kiss on the lips, then pulled me excitedly into the tattoo parlor. In the end, we each got a simple design tattooed on the base of our left ring fingers. A star wrapped in a single, continuous line. Her line was silver, mine was black. The tattoo artist said it was like wearing a permanent ring. The process hurt like hell. The needle piercing my skin was a constant, sharp pain. I winced, breaking out in a cold sweat. But Jessica held my other hand tight the entire time, her eyes fixed on the design as it slowly took shape, a look of pure, devout satisfaction on her face. When it was done, she looked at the matching marks on our hands, her eyes shining with an incredible intensity. She held my hand up next to hers, then looked at me, her gaze a potent mix of possession and adoration. Look, Ethan, she said, her voice soft but firm. We're tied together forever. She leaned in and gently kissed the still stinging tattoo on my finger, her tongue flicking against the fresh wound, sending a shiver through me. Then she traced a path of kisses up my arm, over my neck, and finally captured my lips. The kiss tasted of antiseptic and blood, a solemn, almost barbaric ritual of ownership. I closed my eyes, feeling the lingering sting on my finger and the pressure on my lips, my mind a calm, numb void. The gentle prison had finally been secured with its heaviest lock, and I couldn't even find the keyhole. The tattoo on my hand formed a thin, itchy scab, a constant reminder of that crazy afternoon and the forever brand. Jessica, however, was incredibly satisfied. Every day, she would hold my hand and study it for a long time, her eyes full of obsession, as if admiring a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. She seemed to have calmed down a lot. Her surveillance of me visibly relaxed. I could even chat with Mark in the next cubicle about video games for a few minutes without my phone immediately buzzing. This brief, illusory freedom made me think that maybe after getting this mark, we could really find some kind of twisted balance. Until my boss called me into his office. There was a 2-day, 1-night tech conference in the next city, and he was sending me. My brain buzzed. My first thought wasn't about the work opportunity, but, oh crap, how am I going to explain this to Jessica? I tried to get out of it. Boss, could you send someone else? I have something going on at home. My boss glared at me. What's more important than the company? You're going. Get ready to leave tomorrow morning. I slumped back to my desk, staring at the cartoon kitten icon on my phone. It felt like holding a ticking time bomb. I waited until I got home that night to tell her, trying to sound as casual as possible. As expected, the smile on her face froze. A business trip? She repeated, her voice soft. For how long? Just 2 days. I'll leave tomorrow, and I'll definitely be back the night after. I quickly promised, holding up 3 fingers. I swear, I'll video chat with you the whole time. My location will be on. She didn't say anything. She just looked down, her fingertips gently tracing the star tattoo on my hand, her long eyelashes hiding her expression. The silence was terrifying. Just as I was bracing for the storm, she suddenly looked up, a smile on her face, albeit a strained one. Okay, work is important. You should go. Be safe. I was stunned. I couldn't believe my ears. She just agreed. Jessica, you're really okay with it? She nodded, then leaned into my arms, hugging my waist and burying her face in my chest. I know I can't be too selfish. I don't want to hold you back. But, Ethan, I'm going to miss you. So much. My heart softened. I was flooded with a wave of love and guilt. See, she wasn't completely unreasonable. I held her tight, kissing the top of her head. I'll miss you too. I'll be back as soon as I can. That night, she was extra clingy, practically glued to me in bed, as if she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. The next morning, she got up early to pack my bag, reminding me of every little detail, her eyes red the whole time. When I was leaving, she wrapped her arms around my neck at the door and gave me a deep, long kiss that was full of a sorrowful, possessive energy. At least 3 video calls a day. Don't you dare not answer my calls. Don't turn off your location. She murmured against my lips, listing her demands. Okay, whatever you say. I agreed to everything. The little bit of excitement I'd felt about leaving was washed away by her intense attachment. I arrived in the next city and checked in my hotel. Everything was fine. As promised, I sent her my location, told her I was safe, and even managed a 10-minute video call during my lunch break. In the video, she seemed stable, just kept asking for my room number and if there were any female colleagues with me. There was a networking dinner that night. I told her beforehand that I'd be busy. The dinner was loud and crowded. I had a couple of drinks, got caught up in a conversation with some peers, and didn't feel my phone vibrate in my pocket. When the dinner was over and I got back to my room, I pulled out my phone and my scalp went numb. Missed video calls. Jessica, 3. Missed calls. Jessica, 12. 99 plus unread messages. They started with Ethan, "What are you doing?" and escalated to, "Why aren't you answering?" Then, "Are you lying to me?" and ended with a long string of voice messages that were just her suppressed sobs and tearful questions. I immediately called her back on video. She answered instantly. On the screen, her hair was a mess, her eyes were swollen like walnuts, and her face was streaked with tears. She was in our dark bedroom. "Ethan Hayes." The moment she saw me, she burst into tears. "Why didn't you answer your phone? Where are you? Are you with someone else? You're lying to me. You must be lying to me." Seeing her so hysterical, I was instantly sober. My chest felt tight. "No, Jessica, listen to me. I was at the dinner. It was too loud. I didn't hear. I don't want to listen. I don't believe you." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Turn the camera around. I want to see your room. Now. Right now." Resigned, I did as she asked, walking around the room with my phone, even showing her the bathroom and the closet. "See? I'm alone," I said, exhausted. She calmed down a little, but she was still sobbing, her eyes full of anxiety and suspicion. "Ethan, please come back. I want you to come back right now. I can't take it. I'm so scared all by myself. I feel like you're going to disappear." Looking at her, so fragile and helpless, my frustration at being constantly monitored was once again replaced by pity and powerlessness. I knew that trying to reason with her right now was pointless. "Okay, I'll come back the second it's over tomorrow. The earliest train," I said softly, trying to soothe her. "Don't cry, okay? Look at me." I leaned in and gently kissed the camera. She stared at my action, then started crying even harder, but her hysterics seemed to be subsiding. She leaned in and gave the camera a virtual kiss back. "Ethan," she said, her voice hoarse, full of a dependence and a command that could not be denied. "You promised me forever. You can't go back on your word." I barely slept that night. My phone was on the pillow next to me, the screen on, a voice call with her open, as she had demanded. I could hear her restless tossing and turning, her occasional muffled sobs. Distance hadn't made the heart grow fonder. It had ripped open her deepest insecurities and showed me just how strong and suffocating the threads that bound us together really were. I looked out at the unfamiliar city lights and realized, for the first time with absolute clarity, there was no parole from this prison of love. The day I returned from my business trip, I practically flew off the high-speed train and sprinted home. When I opened the door, Jessica was standing right there, as if she hadn't moved since I left. She threw herself into my arms with such force, she nearly knocked me over. Her arms were a vice around my waist, her face buried in my chest, her body trembling without a sound. No questions, no tears, just a desperate, post-disaster embrace. I held her, feeling the tremors in her thin shoulders. All the exhaustion and frustration from the sleepless night and her phone bombardment melted away into a dull ache. I gently patted her back, murmuring over and over, "I'm back. It's okay, Jessica. I'm here." That night, she was unusually quiet, just clinging to me, her eyes rarely leaving my face, like a frightened animal that had been reunited with its owner. Her fingertips would unconsciously trace the star tattoo on my hand, as if confirming its and my existence. I thought the storm caused by our brief separation was over. At worst, I just have to find a way to get out of all future business trips. But I had underestimated her insecurity and her ability to turn that anxiety into action. A few days later, on a perfectly normal evening, we were curled up on the couch watching a movie. She suddenly picked up a small, elegantly wrapped box and handed it to me, a tentative, hopeful smile on her face. "Ethan, a gift for you." My stomach lurched. After the Maserati, I had developed a conditioned reflex of anxiety whenever she handed me a box. "Please don't let it be the keys to a private jet." I took the box. It was light. Inside, a sleek, stylish smartwatch lay on a velvet cushion. I couldn't see a brand name, but the quality was obvious. "What's this?" I was confused. "It's the latest model," she said, leaning in. She took the watch and gently fastened it onto my left wrist, right next to the star tattoo. Her cool fingertips brushed against my skin. "It can monitor your heart rate, blood oxygen, sleep quality. You work so hard. I need to know that you're healthy." She looked up at me, her eyes shining with pure concern. "And look, it has real-time location tracking." She took out her phone and opened an app. A map appeared on the screen, a small, blinking dot marking our apartment. "This way, I'll always know where you are if you're safe. I was so worried when you were on your trip." As she spoke, her eyes started to well up again, and she rested her head on my shoulder, her voice full of vulnerability. "I'm not trying to spy on you, Ethan. I just need peace of mind. You know how my mind wanders when I'm alone." I looked down at the elegantly designed leash on my wrist, then at her on the verge of tears. My throat felt tight. Any words of refusal died on my tongue. What could I say? That I didn't need my health monitored? That this was a violation of my privacy? In the face of her logic, "I'm only doing this because I love you and I'm worried about you." Any rational argument sounded cold and heartless. This watch was just a more personal, less conspicuous version of the phone's location tracking. Compared to the tattoo, it was almost civilized. I forced a smile, reached up, and stroked her hair. My voice was a little hoarse. "Yeah, this is great. Thank you for thinking of me." Her face lit up. She leaned in and pressed a sweet, fragrant kiss on my lips. "I knew you'd understand." She picked up her phone and, like a child with a new toy, started expertly navigating the app, setting up various alerts and notifications. The light from the screen reflected on her focused, satisfied face, giving her an air of innocent cruelty. I looked down at the cold metal on my wrist. It tracked my pulse, my location, stripping away the last of my physical unknowns. That night, as she slept with her head on my arm, her hand resting on my chest, feeling my heartbeat, the watch on my wrist glowed faintly in the dark, a silent, sleepless sentinel recording everything. I closed my eyes. I felt like I was wrapped in an invisible net, each thread woven from her intense, suffocating love. The tattoo was on my skin. This watch felt like it was embedded in my very being. I shifted slightly, tried to get more comfortable. She immediately mumbled in her sleep and tightened her grip, as if to make sure her possession was still there. I sighed and stopped moving. The cage was getting more and more exquisite and more inescapable. With the reassurance watch on my wrist, life settled back into a tense calm. Jessica's mood visibly stabilized. She even reverted to some of her initial playful affection, ambushing me with hugs while I cooked or waking me up by tickling my nose with her hair. But I knew that beneath this placid surface, a dangerous current was flowing. The watch's presence was a constant reminder of the 24/7 surveillance I was under. One Saturday afternoon, Jessica took me to a new mall downtown. She was in high spirits, trying on clothes, buying jewelry, chirping like a happy bird. I played the part of the perfect boyfriend, carrying her bags, offering opinions, a polite smile plastered on my face. As we were grabbing coffee, I caught a familiar figure out of the corner of my eye. My stomach clenched. I instinctively tried to look away, but it was too late. "Ethan Hayes," a surprised female voice called out. I turned stiffly. It was Megan, my ex-girlfriend from college. A man stood next to her, likely her current partner. Damn it. Of all the people. Megan? What a coincidence. I managed a dry smile on my face. I could feel a cold sweat break out on my back. The watch on my wrist suddenly felt heavier. "Yeah, long time no see," Megan said with an easy smile, her gaze naturally shifting to Jessica. "And this is—" Before I could answer, Jessica took a step forward, naturally linking her arm through mine, her body leaning against me. A perfectly sweet smile bloomed on her face. "Hi, I'm Jessica Miller. Ethan's girlfriend. She emphasized my name with a possessive intimacy, then looked up at me, her expression a mix of innocence and curiosity. Ethan, who is this? The arm she was holding felt like it was being branded. My mind raced, weighing the risks of telling the truth versus lying. Under Jessica's seemingly harmless but all-seeing gaze, I chose to confess. This is my college classmate, Megan, I said, my voice tight. Oh, so you're the famous Megan, Jessica said, as if she just had a revelation. Her smile grew wider, almost childlike. Ethan talks about you college folks all the time. He said that back then, you too. She let the sentence hang, leaving a world of possibilities in the air, but her eyes were like scalpels, dissecting the space between Megan and me. Megan looked awkward. The man next to her frowned. The atmosphere became instantly charged. I felt like I was sitting on a powder keg, desperate to escape. Well, we have to go. You guys have fun, I said, practically trying to drag Jessica away. Oh, don't be in such a hurry, Ethan, Jessica said, not budging. Her smile was even sweeter as she turned to Megan. We should get dinner sometime. I'd love to thank you for taking care of my Ethan back in the day. The way she said my Ethan was soft and gentle, but it was like an invisible wall, completely separating me from my past. Megan forced a smile. Sure, maybe sometime. We should get going. She quickly pulled her partner away and disappeared into the crowd. I let out a breath of relief. It felt like I'd just survived a battle. Let's go, Ethan. Jessica's voice, still sweet, sounded beside me. I looked down at her. The perfect smile was still on her face, but the nails of the hand holding my arm were digging into my skin. She didn't mention Megan again. She didn't ask any questions. She continued shopping as if nothing had happened, showing me new shirts, asking if I liked them. But this silence was more terrifying than any hysterical outburst. I knew a storm was brewing beneath the calm surface. That night, back home, she was still acting normal. She cooked, we ate, we watched TV. She was even more gentle than usual, running my bath for me. It wasn't until bedtime, after I got out of the shower, that I saw her sitting on the bed, holding my phone. I had no idea when she had inspected it again. She looked up at me, her face blank, her eyes as dark and cold as a winter lake. Ethan, she said softly, her voice chillingly calm. Were you happy to see her today? My heart sank. The other shoe had finally dropped. No. I denied it immediately, walking towards the bed to hug her. I barely even remember what she looks like. She subtly moved away, holding up my phone. On the screen was my contacts list. Megan's name was right there. Then why? She asked, her words slow and deliberate. Her eyes locked on mine. Is her number still in your phone? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Why hadn't I deleted it? I guess I had just forgotten. It didn't seem necessary. We never talked. But in Jessica's world, this was an unforgivable crime. She saw my helpless expression and suddenly smiled, a sad, knowing smile that chilled me to the bone. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just put the phone down, reached out, and gently touched the star tattoo on my left wrist, her fingertips ice cold. It's okay, Ethan, she murmured, as if comforting me, or maybe herself. The past doesn't matter. She looked up, leaned in, and kissed the corner of my mouth, a touch as light as a feather, but as final as a verdict. Now, and in the future, right here, her finger pressed down on the tattoo, a faint sting, and here, her other hand covered the smartwatch on my wrist, can only be engraved with my name. Her kiss deepened, a desperate, cleansing possession, as if to erase any trace of anyone else from the inside out. I closed my eyes and endured the kiss, my heart a cold, numb void. I knew that in this silent trial, I had once again been sentenced to life without parole, and the prison was the entire world she had built for me in the name of love. After the run-in with Megan, a strange chill settled over the apartment. Jessica never brought it up again. She didn't even sneak looks at my phone anymore. She was still good to me, taking care of my every need, her smile as sweet as ever. But it was a detached, programmatic kindness. Her smile felt like it was behind frosted glass, blurry and cold. She became quieter, often just staring at me with a blank expression. Occasionally, I would catch a flicker of something in her eyes, a crazed, calculating light that was gone before I could be sure I had seen it. I knew that the thorn was still in her heart, and it was festering. She was planning something. This suspenseful silence was more suffocating than any outburst. I tried to break the tension. I'd start conversations, try to make her laugh, even suggest a weekend getaway. She would agree to everything, playing along, but the distance was always there. It was like she was a perfect, emotionless doll. It all came to a head on a Friday night. I had worked a little late and got home an hour later than usual. The apartment was dark except for a single dim lamp. Jessica was sitting in the shadows on the sofa, perfectly still. "Jessica, I'm home," I said as I took off my shoes, a sense of dread growing in my stomach. She didn't answer. In the faint light, I saw that her face was blank. In her hand, she was clutching something familiar. It was an old USB drive from my college days, filled with useless old schoolwork, game saves, and a few pictures of Megan and me, along with some cringeworthy poems I had written back then. My head roared. I had no idea where that thing had been. How'd she find it? How deep had she dug into my past? My voice trembled with a mix of disbelief, anger, and humiliation. "You went through my things again?" She slowly looked up at me. In the dim light, her eyes were terrifyingly dark, not with tears, but with a dead cold calm and a cruel clarity. "Ethan," she said, her voice flat and emotionless. "This is all garbage, isn't it?" She held up the USB drive, and then, as I watched in horror, she threw it on the floor with all her strength. The plastic casing shattered, but she wasn't done. As if a switch had been flipped, she shot up, ran to my desk, and started pulling out all my old magazines, my rare comic books, even postcards from friends. Anything that held a piece of my past, and swept it all onto the floor. "This is all garbage. Useless. Taking up space," she chanted in a strangely calm voice as she destroyed everything, her eyes burning with a destructive fire. "Jessica, are you out of your mind?" I lunged forward and grabbed her wrist, trying to stop her. That stuff might not have been worth much, but it was a part of my youth. She yanked her arm free, her eyes like poisoned daggers. "Am I crazy?" "Yes, I am. Every time I think about your past having someone else in it, about your eyes reflecting someone else's face, I want to burn it all, destroy it all." She screamed, the tears finally breaking free, not of sadness, but of a desperate, violent rage. "Why do you have to have a past? Why couldn't your life have started the day you met me?" Looking at her, so completely unhinged, all the resentment, anger, and helplessness that had been building up for months finally exploded. "Enough," I roared, shoving her away. I didn't use much force, but she stumbled back as if all her strength had been drained, collapsing onto the floor amidst the wreckage of my past. She froze, looking up at me, her tear-streaked face full of disbelief. It was as if she was seeing me for the first time. I froze too, staring at the hand that had just pushed her, a wave of panic washing over me. I had never laid a hand on her, not even lightly. A brief, dead silence. In the next second, a wave of even greater sorrow and despair consumed her. She stopped screaming, just sat on the floor, hugged her knees, and buried her face, her shoulders shaking violently as she let out a series of suppressed, animalistic sobs. The sound was more heart-wrenching than any loud cry. I looked at her, so small and broken in the middle of the mess, and the fire in my chest was doused with ice water, leaving only a deep, bone-chilling exhaustion. I walked over and slowly knelt, wanting to pull her in my arms. But she suddenly looked up, her eyes blurry with tears, her voice broken. "Ethan, I am sorry. I can't control it. I love you too much. I don't know what to do." She reached out, not to push me away, but to grab the hem of my shirt like it was her last hope. "Don't leave me, please." Looking at her like this, all the arguments I had prepared, all the anger I'd stored up, just vanished. What could I do? Reason with someone who had been driven to the edge by love. I sighed, reached out, and pulled her cold, trembling body into my arms. She didn't fight it, just leaned against my chest, her hot tears soaking my shirt. "I won't leave you," I heard my own hoarse, resigned voice say. She looked up from my chest, searching for my lips. The kiss was salty and chaotic, a mix of tears, despair, and a self-destructive possession. She kissed me with a desperate force, as if to absorb all the conflict, all the anxiety into our bodies. I didn't refuse. I let her take what she needed, responding to her painful kiss. On the floor, amidst the wreckage, we were like two drowning people clinging to each other in a storm, confirming our existence with the touch of our bodies, covering up the ever-deepening crack between us with a violent intimacy. Love was supposed to be a safe harbor. Why did ours feel like a suffocating, endless, entangled affair? That night, we slept amidst the wreckage, like two wounded animals licking each other's wounds. She clung to my pajamas, refusing to let go even in her sleep, as if I would vanish the moment she did. The next day was Saturday. Sunlight streamed through a gap in the curtains, illuminating the shredded and broken pieces of my past on the floor. I looked at Jessica in my arms. She was sleeping fitfully, tear tracks still visible on her eyelashes, her brow furrowed like a deeply wronged child. I gently shifted my body, intending to get up and clean the mess. The slight movement woke her instantly. Her eyes flew open, filled with a lingering terror and panic. "Ethan," she cried out, her voice raspy, her arms tightening around me. "Where are you going?" "Nowhere." I patted her back, my own voice hoarse like I had a hangover. "Just cleaning up." "Don't," she said urgently, looking up at me with a pleading, almost obsessive gaze. "Just leave it, to remind me. I can't be like that again." "Ethan, I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." As she spoke, fresh tears welled up, not the hysterical sobs of the night before, but silent tears of genuine regret and fear. She wasn't afraid of the things she had destroyed. She was afraid of me pushing her away, afraid of me leaving. Looking at her, the last embers of my anger and chill were replaced by a more complex emotion. Helplessness, pity, and perhaps even a twisted sort of understanding. In her logic, destroying my past was like clearing a virus to protect the purity of our present. "Okay, we won't clean it." I relented, lying back down and pulling her closer. Like a frightened animal finding shelter, she immediately curled into my arms, pressing her cheek against my chest, listening to my heartbeat, and slowly calming down. We stayed in bed until noon. She became exceptionally gentle and eager to please. She made breakfast, poured me water, and her eyes always held a hint of caution and an overwhelming dependency. In the afternoon, she said she wanted to get some fresh air. I had no objections, but when I put on my shoes and reached for the door, it wouldn't open. Not because the lock was broken, but because it had been locked from the outside with a key. I froze, turning to look at Jessica behind me. She stood in the shadow of the entryway, her face blank, her eyes fixed on me, her voice as light as a feather. "Ethan, let's not go out, okay?" A chill shot up my spine. You locked the door from the outside." I could barely believe it. She nodded, walking towards me and taking my hand. Her fingertips were ice cold. "There are too many bad things out there. People who will make you think of the past, things that will distract you. Let's just stay here, just the two of us. Isn't that better?" She pulled me towards the living room with surprising strength. "We have everything here. Food, drinks, anything you need. I can have it all delivered." She sat me down on the sofa, then knelt on the floor in front of me, looking up with a pure, crazed expression. "We don't need anyone else, Ethan. We only need each other." I looked at the locked door, then at Jessica, kneeling at my feet, her eyes full of a possessive and dependent love, and I felt my breath catch in my chest. This wasn't a tantrum. This was imprisonment. Literal, physical imprisonment. I wanted to scream, to question her, to break down the door. But looking into her eyes, which seemed so fragile they might shatter at a touch, all my anger got stuck in my throat. Seeing my silence, her eyes started to well up again. "Are you mad? Do you want to push me away again?" I just want to be with you forever." "Is that so wrong?" She leaned forward, burying her face in my lap, her thin shoulders trembling. I looked down at the top of her head, at the star tattoo and the cold smartwatch on my wrist, and at the locked door that sealed us off from the world. Anger and fear receded like a tide, replaced by a deep, suffocating powerlessness. I reached out and gently placed my hand on her head, stroking her hair. "It's not wrong," I heard my own dry voice say. We won't go out." She immediately looked up, smiling through her tears, as if I had just given her the most precious promise in the world. She straightened up, wrapped her arms around my neck, and kissed me. The kiss was salty with tears and her familiar, sweet scent, which now felt chilling. She kissed me with a deep, desperate force, as if to meld us together, to make us inseparable. I closed my eyes and accepted the kiss, feeling her almost convulsive embrace. The closing of this door hadn't just trapped my body. It had sealed off all possibility of escape. The key was, and always would be, in her hand. And I, it seemed, was getting used to the only light in this sealed room. The burning, possessive fire in her eyes, which reflected nothing but me. The first day of being locked in, I paced the living room like a caged animal. My phone had no signal. The internet was cut off. The only means of communication was a landline she'd left, which could only dial her specific number. The windows were fitted with invisible security bars, strong enough to feel hopeless. My world had shrunk to this 1,000-square-foot space. Jessica, on the other hand, was unusually calm, even happy. She went about her day as if she were curating the perfect, endless honeymoon, cheerfully planning our life in seclusion. "See, Ethan? Isn't this nice?" she hummed, placing a beautifully arranged plate of sandwiches and freshly squeezed juice on the coffee table. No work to bother us, no irrelevant people, just you and me. I watched her, my throat tight, unable to speak. Anger and fear raged inside me, with nowhere to go. I tried to reason with her. I tried pleading. "Jessica, you can't do this. This is illegal imprisonment. Let me out. I promise I won't leave you. We could go back to how things were, okay? I need to work. I need normal social interaction." Each time, she would just look at me with those wide, tear-filled eyes, then throw herself into my arms, her voice choked with emotion. "Ethan, don't you understand? Everything out there is unimportant, unsafe. Only here are you completely mine. Why do you want to leave? Is there something I'm not doing right?" All my words were useless against her self-contained logic of love. She wasn't ignorant of the law or reason. She simply chose to believe what she wanted to believe. That complete control over me was the only way to protect our love. After a few failed attempts, I fell silent. I started spending long hours on the sofa, just staring at the locked door or at the sky, sectioned off by the security bars. A deep sense of powerlessness washed over me, like sinking into warm quicksand. The more I struggled, the deeper I sank. Jessica took my silence as acceptance. She became even happier, finding new ways to please me. Her cooking skills improved dramatically. She found all sorts of movies for us to watch together, snuggling against me, asking for kisses at emotional moments. She even got a projector and would cast a starry sky onto the living room wall at night, pulling me onto the carpet to dance, with no music, just the sound of our breathing and heartbeats. Her affection was magnified in this confined space. She would walk around in just my shirt, her bare legs on display. She would wake me up with kisses in the morning and refuse to get off me. She would hold me tight at night, whispering words of love and possession into my ear. Sometimes, after she fell asleep, I would gently get up and walk to the door, my hand on the cold wood. I could feel the world outside, my old, familiar life now so distant. One time, I stood by the window for too long, watching the occasional pedestrian on the street below, a certain look in my eyes. Jessica silently came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist, her cheek against my back. "Ethan," her voice was muffled, a hint of tension in it. "What are you looking at?" I didn't turn around. I didn't pull away. "Nothing," I said flatly. She was quiet for a moment, then her arms tightened. "Don't look outside. Look at me. I'm your whole world." She turned me around and stood on her toes to kiss me. The kiss was an urgent confirmation, a gentle but firm command. Her tongue parted my lips, a deep, entangling kiss, as if to pull my wandering thoughts back and lock them away in this small space. I didn't resist. I even started to respond passively. Her kisses, her touch, her scent everywhere. It had all once suffocated me, but now it was the only reality I could feel. I think I was getting used to it, used to her meticulous care, her obsessive love, this small world with just the two of us. The anger and the struggle had worn me down. All that was left was a numb calm and a twisted sense of security. Yeah, what was so great about the outside world anyway? Endless work, complicated relationships, all sorts of uncertainties and troubles. Here, everything was simple. Just loving her and being loved by her. She was my sweet jailer, and I, it seemed, was learning to enjoy my life sentence. One night, she was curled up in my arms, drawing circles on my chest with her finger. "Ethan," she asked softly, "are you happy now?" I looked up at the projected, fake starry sky on the ceiling, silent for a moment. Then I leaned down and kissed her forehead. "Yeah," I grunted a vague sound. She sighed contentedly and pressed herself closer to me. In this cage, so tightly woven with her love, I think, I was really starting to forget what the real sky looked like. The days of being kept passed like a slow immersion in warm water. A week went by without me even realizing it. My internal clock was now completely synced to Jessica. Wake up, eat, watch a movie, make love, sleep, repeat. I even started to enjoy the mental vacancy, the state of not having to think, only to feel her presence. The anger and struggle were blunted, stored away in the back of my mind like dusty old furniture. Jessica was very pleased with my obedience. The obsessive tension in her eyes was replaced by a satisfied languor. She was like a dragon who had finally secured her treasure in her lair, content to curl up beside it, occasionally flicking her tail to confirm it was still there. This afternoon, we had just finished a particularly passionate session. Her sweat-dampened hair was stuck to my neck as she contentedly nuzzled against me, her fingers unconsciously tracing circles over the non-existent brand on my chest. The air was thick with a mix of sensuality and tranquility. And then, ding-dong. The sharp, clear sound of the doorbell was like a stone dropped into a stagnant pond, shattering the silence. My whole body went rigid. I was yanked out of my drowsy comfort. My heart started to pound uncontrollably. Outside, a sound from the outside. Jessica, lying on top of me, tensed up instantly. She shot her head up, the languor in her eyes replaced by alarm and a hint of panic, like a wild animal whose territory had been invaded. "Who is it?" she whispered, her voice low and guarded, more to herself than to me. A few seconds of silence, then a man's voice from the other side of the door. "Hello, property management. The unit below you reported a possible leak from your bathroom. We're here to check it out." Property management, a real, live person from the outside world. I could almost hear the blood rushing in my ears. A chance, this was a chance. I could yell for help. I could. I instinctively tried to open my mouth, to move. But Jessica was faster. She clapped her hand over my mouth, her grip so tight her nails dug into my cheek. She leaned over me, her eyes locked on mine, a clear warning mixed with a silent plea. "Don't you dare," her eyes said. "Please." She shook her head slightly, then took a deep breath, composing herself. In a sleepy, slightly annoyed voice, she called out, "It's fine. We already checked. No problem here. Thanks." Her voice sounded surprisingly natural, like someone who had just been woken up and was annoyed. The man outside hesitated. "It's better if we just take a look, just in case." I said, "It's fine." Jessica's voice rose, a clear note of impatience in it. "We're resting. Please don't disturb us." Her tone was firm, with the kind of unquestionable authority of a spoiled rich girl. Silence from the other side. He was probably intimidated or just decided it wasn't worth the trouble. I heard the faint sound of footsteps walking away. Each step felt like it was stomping on my heart, extinguishing the tiny flicker of hope that had just been ignited. Jessica still had her hand over my mouth. We stayed in that position, listening to each other's breathing in the silence. Her breath was hot and rapid against my face. Only when she was sure the man was gone did she slowly remove her hand. She didn't speak right away, just looked at me, her expression a complex mix of relief, fear, and a hurt look that was a reaction to my momentary stiffness. "Ethan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, her hand gently touching the red marks her nails had left on my cheek. Did you want to let him in? Did you want them to come in?" I didn't answer. I just closed my eyes. A wave of powerlessness washed over me again. I had wavered, even if it was just for a second. My silence seemed to hurt her. She suddenly ducked her head and kissed me hard. The kiss was not tender. It was a punishment, a claiming, rough and urgent. She even bit my lower lip, the faint taste of blood spreading in my mouth. "Don't you dare. Don't even think about leaving. Don't let anyone in," she commanded between breathless kisses, her voice a domineering whisper in my ear. She was trying to erase the disruption of the doorbell, to pull my consciousness and senses back into her small world. I endured her kiss, not responding, not resisting. The sting on my lip was sharp, but a part of my heart felt even more numb. That doorbell had been like a needle, popping the fragile bubble of my forced peace. I suddenly realized, with a chilling clarity, that I wasn't used to this. I had just given up. Jessica finally stopped, burying her head in my neck, her sobs soft and broken. Ethan, don't leave me. You're all I have. Everyone out there is bad. They all want to take you away from me. I raised my hand and mechanically patted her back. My eyes were fixed on the fake starry sky projected on the ceiling. That door had locked away more than just my body. It had locked away the last shred of my identity as Ethan Hayes, not just Jessica Miller's possession. The illusion was shattered. All that was left was this warm, exquisite, and utterly hopeless cage, and the jailer by my side, a woman made terrifying by her love. The property management incident was like a thorn. Though Jessica had forcefully pushed it down, it remained, throbbing with a dull ache at unexpected moments. My silence deepened. I stopped looking out the window, stopped trying to communicate. Even when she was excitedly planning our eternal life together, I would just offer a hollow smile. Jessica seemed to get nervous. She became even more affectionate, trying all sorts of ways to arouse my passion. She'd wear incredibly sexy lingerie and parade around the apartment. She deliberately mimicked the little things she did when we first started dating, things that used to make my heart race. Her kisses became more desperate, almost pleading. But I was like a wrung-out sponge. No amount of stimulation could get a response out of me. This morning, I was brushing my teeth at the sink. Jessica, as usual, was clinging to my back, her arms around my waist, watching me in the mirror. "Ethan, the weather looks nice today," she said, her voice artificially cheerful. I didn't answer, just mechanically brushed my teeth, staring at the pale, hollow-eyed man in the mirror. My beard was getting scraggly, my hair was a little long. I was wearing one of the silk robes she had bought me. I looked like a well-dressed but soulless doll. Was this still me? The guy who used to secretly check out girls on the bus, who used to joke around with his colleagues, who used to get excited about beating a video game. Where had he gone? The man in the mirror had numb eyes and a downturned mouth, a look of perpetual weariness and deadness. A wave of intense nausea washed over me. Not physical, but psychological. Disgust at this life, at this stranger in the mirror, at the woman behind me who had lovingly smothered him to death. Ugh! I suddenly bent over the sink and dry heaved, nothing coming up but a burning acid in my throat. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Jessica panicked, patting my back, her voice full of genuine alarm. "Are you sick? Is it your stomach?" I pushed her away and braced myself against the sink, gasping for air. I looked up at the mirror again. The man's eyes were red, tears welling up from the force of my retching. His expression was one of undisguised disgust and fear. I was disgusted with this soulless version of myself. I was terrified of this endless, inescapable imprisonment. Jessica saw the look in my eyes in the mirror. Her concern froze on her face, slowly replaced by a wounded coldness and a flicker of ruthlessness. She didn't ask me what was wrong again. She just stood silently behind me, also watching me in the mirror. Our eyes met in the reflection, one desperate, one obsessive. "Ethan," she said, her voice soft but sharp as an icicle. "Do you hate this life so much? So much that it makes you sick?" I didn't answer, just stared at myself in the mirror, as if trying to shatter the weak image with my gaze. She suddenly smiled, a tragic, determined smile. She walked up and hugged me from behind again, her arms tightening, her chin on my shoulder, her cheek against mine, both of us looking at our reflection. "Look," she said, pointing at our intertwined figures in the mirror, her voice a hypnotic whisper. "We're so perfect together. We were made for each other. We'll never be apart." Her lips brushed against my ear, her warm breath a chilling caress. "You can't escape, Ethan. Your body is here, and your heart." Her finger gently tapped my left chest. "Has to be here, too." She turned me around to face her. The coldness was gone from her eyes, replaced by a deep, twisted love and possessiveness. "If it makes you sick, then throw up," she said, cupping my face, forcing me to look at her. "Get all out. All those bad thoughts, all those thoughts of the outside world. Just get rid of them." She kissed me. The kiss was no longer pleading or punishing. It was a cleansing and undeniable invasion. Her tongue aggressively swept through my mouth, as if to erase and overwrite the resistance that my dry heaving represented. I stood there, stiff and unresponsive. Her kiss was like thick honey, enveloping me, pulling me down. After a long time, she finally let go, her forehead resting against mine, both of us breathing heavily. "Well," she asked, her eyes burning. "Still feel sick?" I looked at her, so close, at the small, pathetic reflection of myself in her eyes. An extreme weariness washed over me. What was the point of fighting? What was the point of struggling? The end result was always the same. I closed my eyes and slowly shook my head. She smiled, satisfied, and kissed the corner of my mouth again, this time a soft, rewarding peck. "Good boy." She took my hand and led me out of the bathroom, like I was a child who couldn't walk on his own. I glanced back at the mirror. The hollow-eyed man was still standing there, trapped behind the smooth glass, trapped in this cage called love, screaming without a sound. And I just turned my head and followed her into the warm, hopeless darkness. After that breakdown in front of the mirror, I became a complete shell. Eating, sleeping, accepting her kisses and caresses, it all felt like running a pre-written program. No resistance, no response, just existence. My soul seemed to have detached itself, floating near the ceiling, coldly observing the husk, named Ethan Hayes as it slowly decayed in the cage meticulously crafted by a woman named Jessica Miller. Jessica finally seemed to realize the gravity of the situation. She stopped trying to seduce me with sexy outfits or create romantic atmospheres. She just silently, stubbornly, watched over me, like she was guarding a priceless vase that was about to shatter. She started reading poetry to me, poems about eternal and singular love, her voice soft and almost reverent. She pulled out old photos from when we first got together, pointing to each one, recounting the memories, trying to awaken my dormant feelings. But I just listened, watched, and felt nothing. The sweet past was a blurry, distant memory, viewed through a thick, frosted glass. She even tried showing me financial documents from her family's business, the massive asset figures, the high-end company names, trying to prove her worth in a different way, to prove that she could give me the best of everything, including the secluded, safe love. I looked at the documents and found them laughable. Money, power, the things that used to make me feel insecure and small now meant less to me than a bird flying past the window. My silence and emptiness were like a dull knife, slowly sawing at Jessica's nerves. I could feel her anxiety growing day by day. Her gaze became more frantic, her arms held me tighter, as if I would vanish in a thin air if she let go. The turning point came on a stormy night. The wind and rain battered the windows, lightning tore through the sky like a sword, and the thunder was deafening. The lights in the room flickered a few times, then went out with a pop. We were plunged into darkness, with only the occasional flash of lightning providing a brief, stark illumination. The sudden darkness and the loud noise jolted me out of my stupor for a moment. I instinctively flinched. Jessica, who had been clinging to me, started to sob softly. Not her usual performative crying, but real, suppressed, fearful sobs. She was scared. She was afraid of the dark, of the thunder. This realization surprised me. This seemingly omnipotent, obsessively strong woman had such a vulnerable side. When another loud clap of thunder shook the building, she trembled, burrowing into my arms like a frightened rabbit, clutching my shirt, her face buried in my chest. "Ethan, I am scared," she whimpered. Her body was cold and trembling violently. In that moment, the soul that had been floating near the ceiling was yanked back into my body. The trembling woman in my arms was no longer my terrifying jailer, but just a normal girl who was afraid of thunderstorms. My arms, which had been stiff for so long, slowly came up and rested on her shaking back, gently patting her. This simple gesture seemed to be a huge comfort to her. Her sobs gradually subsided, though she continued to press against me, drawing warmth from my body. We held each other in the darkness, listening to the raging storm outside. Her breathing slowly evened out, her trembling ceased. "Ethan," she whispered in the dark, her voice still thick from crying. "I know what I did was wrong. I know I probably ruined your life." Her voice was stripped of its usual possessiveness and dominance, filled only with vulnerability and uncertainty. I love you so much. So much that I don't know what to do. I'm afraid you'll leave, afraid you'll see the outside world, afraid you'll think someone else is better. I'm more afraid of losing you than I am of the dark, of the thunder, 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times more afraid. She looked up. Even in the darkness, I could feel the intensity of her gaze. If you're really in so much pain. Her voice broke, filled with a sacrificial agony. I can let you go. She said the words with immense difficulty, as if it took all her strength. Then she buried her face in my chest again, her shoulders shaking slightly, as if awaiting a final judgment. Let me go. The words exploded in my mind like thunder. I could go back to my old life. Taking the bus, writing code, grabbing wings with my friends, breathing free air. But then what? Without her by my side, without her eyes constantly following me, without her intense, suffocating love, was that really the life I wanted? I suddenly realized that during this long imprisonment, during my silent struggle and gradual numbness, something had fundamentally changed. I had grown accustomed to her scent, her meticulous care, her gaze that saw me as the entire world. This extreme, twisted sense of belonging was like a drug that had seeped into my very bones. If I left her, I might. Not physically, but a withering of the soul. Outside, the rain began to subside. The thunder grew distant. I looked down and in the darkness found her lips. The kiss was not passive, not numb. It was a gentle, deep kiss of resigned finality. I actively responded to her, savoring her lips, tangling my tongue with hers, as if to give her my answer and to seal my own fate. She was stunned, then responded with a joyful fervor. Her kiss became passionate and greedy, full of the relief of having something precious returned to her and an even deeper possession. When the kiss ended, we were both breathing heavily in the darkness. I cupped her face, my forehead against hers. My voice was hoarse but clear. I'm not leaving. Jessica, I'm not leaving. I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying here with you. She froze, then hugged me with all her might, tears of joy streaming down her face. Ethan, my Ethan, she sobbed, repeatedly calling my name, her kisses raining down on my face, my lips. I knew, in that moment, that Ethan Hayes was dead. What was left was the star who willingly belonged to Jessica Miller, the introvert. The sun broke through the clouds, a sliver of light piercing through the curtains. She was fast asleep in my arms, a contented, peaceful smile on her face. I looked at her and gently kissed the tear tracks at the corner of her eyes. One impulsive move, a lifetime of introversion. The price was paid. This was it. After that stormy night when I finally said, I'm not leaving, my relationship with Jessica entered a whole new phase. It was like a string that had been stretched to its breaking point had suddenly gone slack, or like a rebirth after a near-death experience. She stopped locking the door. One morning, I woke up and instinctively glanced at the door. The conspicuous key was gone. She walked in with a glass of warm water, saw me looking, and just smiled sweetly. Ethan, have some water? The sun is so nice today. Let's go out on the terrace later. Her tone was so natural. It was as if the door had never been locked. I was stunned for a moment, then I understood. The lock had moved from the door to my heart. She knew I wouldn't run away anymore. The internet and my phone signal were back too. She even handed me my phone. The screen was clean, with only the essential social media and work apps. The games and random group chats she had disapproved were all gone. She was like a meticulous gardener who had already pruned all the unnecessary branches. I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over the screen, but I didn't know what to open. The group chat with my friends? It had been silent for months. The news? I didn't care. Order food? She had already prepared a delicious breakfast. I just put the phone down and took the glass from her. Thanks, I said. Her eyes crinkled into crescents. She leaned in and pecked me on the lips. Don't be so formal with me. Our life seemed to have returned to normal. I could walk around the apartment freely, go out on the terrace for some fresh air, and even go downstairs to the convenience store with her. But I knew that everything was different. This was a more advanced form of imprisonment. Invisible, based on my own acceptance and dependence. She began to systematically rebuild my world. She showed me movies and books she had curated, all about undying love or protagonists who ultimately chose to return to their families and abandon the outside world. She would snuggle up next to me and whisper, "See, Ethan, all that stuff out there is fake. The only real thing is the person next to you, right?" She introduced me to her world, not through cold financial documents, but in more relatable ways. For example, she would point to a brief glimpse of her father on a financial news channel and say nonchalantly, "That's my dad. He's always so busy, he never has time for me." Or, as we passed by a luxury apartment complex, she would casually mention, "My family has some investments in this project, I think." She was slowly, subtly, painting her background, her social class, into my consciousness. Not to show off, but to make me accustomed to it, to make me understand that the peaceful environment I was in was supported and protected by an immense power. I silently accepted it all. Like a new student, I was relearning the rules of this world defined by her. Occasionally, a faint flicker of the old Ethan Hayes would struggle within me. One time, I saw some kids flying a kite outside, and my gaze unconsciously followed it. Jessica immediately noticed. She hugged me from behind and whispered, "Do you want to play? I can have the entire park cleared out for us." I shook my head. "No, it's fine. I'm just looking." She nuzzled against my back, satisfied. "Yeah, just looking is fine. It's windy out. You might get sick, and I'd be worried." See? Even that tiny bit of longing for the outside world was gently, promptly extinguished and transformed into a proof of her concern for me. In the evenings, we would cook together. Usually, she would prepare the ingredients, and I would do the cooking. It was one of the few things that still made me feel a sense of self. She loved to watch, handing me a plate, or suddenly hugging me from behind, her chin on my shoulder as I stir-fried. Her breath was warm against my ear, full of dependence and complete trust. "Ethan, you look so handsome when you cook," she would murmur. I would turn my head and gently kiss her forehead. She would purr like a rewarded kitten. This daily routine was calm, warm, even had a hint of domestic bliss. If you ignore the fact that this domestic bliss was on a golden, secluded island. One night, we were leaning against the headboard. She was on her tablet, dealing with some business, and I was reading a philosophy book she had recommended. She suddenly put down her tablet, turned around, and straddled my lap, cupping my face, her expression focused and serious. "Ethan," she said, "let's redecorate this place in a style you like. Or we could move to a bigger house, one with a garden and a pool, so you can sunbathe and swim at home." I looked at her. She knew I had accepted my situation. Now, she was trying to make the cage more comfortable, trying to fill any remaining longing for the outside with material things. I reached out and touched her face, my thumb gently brushing against the corner of her lips. "This place is fine," I said, "as long as you're here." It was the truth. In this small world that she completely controlled, I did feel a twisted, responsibility-free sense of peace. Her eyes instantly lit up as if filled with starlight. She leaned in and kissed me deeply. The kiss was full of joy and a sense of we finally agree satisfaction. Her kisses trailed down my neck, my collarbone. Her fingers deftly unbuttoned my pajamas. I closed my eyes, feeling her breath and touch, my hands tangled in her hair. In this perfect closed-loop cage of love she had built, I had given up thinking, given up struggling. All that was left was a sensory surrender and a spiritual dependence. The new world order was simple. She was my entire world, and I was the sole and permanent resident of her world. The days flowed by peacefully under the new rules I was growing accustomed to. Jessica started involving me in the harmless games of her world, as if sharing her toys. For example, she'd ask for my help in shortlisting items for a charity auction catalog, or for a common man's opinion on a new high-end art space she was backing. She would always be on my arm, listening intently to my thoughts, then bat her sparkling eyes and say, "Ethan, you're brilliant." I never would have thought of that angle. I knew this was still part of her taming process, giving me a role in her world, making me contribute a small amount of work to generate a false sense of accomplishment and belonging, thus making her exquisite cage even more inescapable. I played along, fulfilling the role she needed. The stagnant water of my soul would occasionally ripple when I came into contact with a bit of outside information, but it would quickly settle back into silence. Until she told me she was taking me to a small family dinner. Just a few close relatives, a casual meal, she said nonchalantly, holding up a brand new designer suit against my body. Let them all see how wonderful my Ethan is. My body instantly stiffened. Family? That meant more people like her parents, with their scrutinizing, critical, and perhaps even contemptuous gazes. Duh-e. How'd it go? My throat was dry. Jessica put down the suit and stood in front of me, cupping my face, her gaze gentle but firm. Of course you do. You're the most important person in my life. Of course I want them all to know. She stood on her toes and kissed my tightly pressed lips, a comforting gesture. Don't worry, I'll be there. If anyone dares to give you a hard time, I'll make their life miserable. She said this with a sweet smile, but a cold, sharp light flashed in her eyes. I knew she was capable of it. The dinner was at a private estate owned by her family. The car drove down a long, tree-lined path and stopped in front of a brightly lit European-style mansion. A uniformed servant respectfully opened the car door. I took a deep breath and followed Jessica inside. The hall was a flurry of activity, filled with the scent of expensive perfume, cigars, and food. The chatter was low and restrained, everyone wearing a carefully crafted mask. Our arrival was like a stone dropped into a calm lake. Almost all eyes, overtly or covertly, turned to us. Especially to me. Curiosity, scrutiny, assessment, with the natural superiority of the upper class and a hint of amusement. I felt like a common sparrow suddenly placed in a museum of rare birds, every feather exposed under the spotlight. Jessica held my arm tightly, a flawless, sweet smile on her face, gracefully greeting everyone. She introduced me as my boyfriend, Ethan Hayes, her tone casual but with an underlying note of declaration. I was led through the crowd like a puppet, trying to maintain a calm exterior. I answered the same old questions. What do you do for a living? What about your family? How did you and Jessica meet? My answers were simple and pale. A coder, a normal family. We met on the street. I could feel some people's eyes flicker with a knowing, even dismissive look after hearing my answers. But out of respect for Jessica, no one said anything outright. The silent pressure, however, was like a tide pressing in on me from all sides. Jessica seemed to sense my tension. As we walked to the dinner table, she squeezed my hand under the cover of her dress and leaned in to whisper in my ear, "Don't mind them. They're just a bunch of parasites living off their ancestors. All of them together aren't worth a single finger of yours." Her defense was dismissive and condescending, but it strangely eased my tension a little. At the dinner table, I sat next to Jessica, across from a lavishly dressed cousin of hers. The woman's words were always laced with sarcasm. Jessica's taste has become so unique lately, the cousin said, sipping her red wine, her gaze mockingly sweeping over me. I hear Mr. Hayes is in IT. That's a young man's game, isn't it? Must be hard work. Not like our Jessica, born to a life of luxury. I gripped my knife and fork tightly. But Jessica just smiled, a smile sweeter and colder than her cousin's. You're right, cousin. Ethan is in IT, earning a living with his own skills. He's certainly better than some people who only know how to ask their family for money and lose it all on bad investments. Right, cousin? Her tone was innocent, as if she were just stating a fact. The cousin's face instantly turned sour, and she fell silent. Jessica turned to me, a radiant smile on her face, and placed a piece of tender fish on my plate. Ethan, try this. You've been working so hard lately. It's good for your brain. In that moment, watching her fend off the attacks for me, watching her unabashed defense and favoritism, I felt a complex mix of emotions. I knew her methods might not be entirely righteous, and her love was toxic, but undeniably, among this crowd of hypocritical relatives, she was the only one who stood by me without reservation. After dinner, we got into the car to go home. She seemed tired, leaning on my shoulder with her eyes closed. Tired? I asked. She murmured, snuggling closer. Dealing with these people is so boring. She was quiet for a moment, then whispered, See, Ethan, this is what the outside world is like. Hypocritical, calculating, full of malicious comparisons. Only when it's just the two of us are things clean and real. She looked up, her face illuminated by the passing city lights, and found my lips. The kiss was soft and dependent, a request for comfort. I kissed her back, gently patting her back. Yeah, the outside world was pretty boring. Those looks, those comparisons, those invisible barriers. It was better to go back to our small, completely controlled world, a world that belonged only to us. At least there, I didn't have to face any of this. At least there, she loved me with all her heart. The car drove into the night, leaving the glamorous but cold world behind. And I, it seemed, had become even more of an introvert. The family dinner was like a stone dropped into a lake. The ripples eventually faded, but the stone remained at the bottom. Jessica and I returned to our secluded love nest, and life went on as usual. She was even better to me, almost as if she were trying to compensate for something. Her care was so meticulous. It was as if I were a fragile piece of art that had been recovered. We still spent most of our time in the apartment, but she started taking me out more often, to her private art galleries, to exclusive clubs, to elite salons. It was as if she were trying to gently acclimate me to her world, while at the same time silently declaring my existence and ownership to that world. I played along, numbly accepting everything, until her father, David Miller, sent his men to our door. That afternoon, we had just come back from a private screening when we saw two men in black suits standing outside our apartment. They weren't property management, not security guards. They had an air of authority that could only come from a place of unquestionable power. Miss Miller, the master would like to see Mr. Hayes, the lead man said with a slight bow, his tone respectful but firm. Jessica's face instantly darkened. She was like a lioness whose territory had been invaded, instinctively stepping in front of me. What does he want with my boyfriend? He can talk to me. The master only said he wants to speak with Mr. Hayes alone, the man said, his face impassive, his gaze passing over Jessica to land on me like two cold searchlights. Speak with me alone? My stomach clenched. That feeling of being scrutinized and controlled by a higher power was back, more direct and oppressive than the subtle glances of the dinner party. Jessica was about to argue, but I gently pulled her arm. I knew there was no escape. This was a summons from the king, one that Jessica's tantrums or pleas couldn't deflect. And a small, ridiculous part of my masculine pride didn't want to hide behind her forever. It's okay. I'll go, I told Jessica, trying to keep my voice calm. She whipped her head around, her eyes full of panic and protest. Ethan, no. I patted her hand, giving her a reassuring look. Don't worry. It's just a chat. In the end, I got into the black, soundproof sedan. Jessica tried to follow, but the two men politely but firmly blocked her way. She stood at the apartment entrance, her eyes red, staring at the departing car, like a mother animal whose cub was being taken away. The car drove to the other side of the city, entering a heavily guarded, serene compound, and stopped in front of a traditional but imposing villa. I was led into a study. Rosewood furniture, walls lined with books, the air filled with the scent of sandalwood and an invisible pressure. David Miller sat behind a massive desk, reading a document. He didn't look up right away. I stood in the center of the room, feeling like a criminal under interrogation. The silence was a heavy weight on my chest. Finally, he put down the document and looked up, his hawk-like eyes sharp and piercing. He didn't bother with pleasantries. Mr. Hayes, name your price. I was stunned. What? He leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped on the desk, his voice calm but powerful. Leave my daughter. How much money do you need, or what kind of career path do you want? I can give it to you. So direct, so insulting. He didn't even bother to hide his contempt, as if he were dealing with a problem that could be easily solved with money. Blood rushed to my head. A mix of humiliation and anger made my fingers tremble. I opened my mouth, wanted to argue, to tell him that Jessica and I were in love, that I wasn't with her for the money. But the words got stuck in my throat. Under his all-knowing, all-powerful gaze, any defense seemed pathetic and ridiculous. He saw my reaction, and his lips twitched almost imperceptibly, as if in mockery. Young man, he said, his tone changing to one of feigned benevolence. Jessica is still young. She doesn't know what she's doing. Her feelings come and go. You two are not from the same world. Forcing it won't do either of you any good. Take enough money to live comfortably for the rest of your life, find a normal girl, and settle down. Isn't that a better life? A better life? A normal girl? Jessica's face flashed in my mind, her crying, her smiling, her clinging to me as if I were her whole world. And that stormy night when I had said, I'm not leaving, those days and nights, where I had been slowly eroded, reshaped, and remade by her obsession and possession, had already turned me into a monster incapable of adapting to normal and settled. I took a deep breath, suppressed the turmoil in my heart, and met his gaze, my voice surprisingly calm. Mr. Miller, I don't want money. David Miller raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised. And I don't want a career, I continued, each word squeezed out from between my teeth. I only want Jessica. The moment I said it, a strange sense of relief washed over me. Not because of some noble declaration of love, but a resigned acceptance of my fate. I had been pulled into this abyss by her. I had no choice but to sink with her. David Miller's expression turned completely cold, the pretense of kindness gone, replaced by an icy, unquestionable authority. It seems you prefer the hard way. He leaned back in his chair and waved his hand, as if shooing away a fly. You will regret this. Show him out. I was escorted out of the study by the two men in black and put back in a car. On the way back, I watched the city lights streak past the window, my heart cold. I knew I had just made a powerful enemy. The days ahead would probably not be so peaceful anymore. The car had just stopped in front of the apartment building when a figure lunged forward and pulled open the door. It was Jessica. She had clearly been waiting for me, her eyes red and swollen, tear tracks on her face. Ethan, are you okay? Did my dad give you a hard time? She asked anxiously, checking me over, her voice choked with sobs. I looked at her, so panicked and completely dependent on me, and the fear and humiliation I had felt in front of her father strangely dissipated. I reached out and pulled her into a tight hug, feeling her body tremble. I'm fine, I whispered, my chin resting on the top of her head. I told him, I only want you. Jessica's body went stiff, then she hugged me back with all her might, her tears soaking my shirt. Ethan, my Ethan, she sobbed, looking up and wildly kissing my chin, my cheek, finally finding my lips, a kiss of post-disaster joy and an even deeper possession. The kiss was salty and chaotic, full of the taste of tears and a desperate confirmation. I closed my eyes, returning her kiss. See, this was my choice. To reject the kingdom's offer of amnesty, and willingly, forever, be her one and only, lonely but happy prisoner. After I came back from her father's imposing study and declared, I only want you, the way Jessica looked at me changed completely. It was no longer just obsessive possession and dependence. There was a new, almost fanatical sense of recognition, as if she had found her own kind. We were no longer just a jailer and her prisoner, but co-conspirators standing together against the world. She became even more inseparable from me, but it wasn't out of surveillance. It was a deep-seated attachment. She would just sit and watch me, even when I was reading or on the computer, a dreamy, contented smile on her face. Ethan, she would say suddenly, you weren't even afraid of my dad's threats for me. It wasn't a question, but a statement of awe, her eyes shining as if she had discovered a rare treasure. I would look up from what I was doing, and like a little animal cued by a signal, she would crawl over from the other side of the sofa, curl up in my arms, and wait for a kiss of confirmation. I would lean down and kiss her gently. The kiss was no longer a task or a compromise, but a strange act of reassurance and affirmation. As if to say, yes, I chose you. I chose this seemingly hopeless abyss with you. The pressure from her father didn't stop. It began to manifest in more concrete ways. First, the company where I was a nominal consultant called, politely informing me that due to restructuring, my position had been eliminated. Then, my mother called, saying that her small supermarket was suddenly being inspected by various departments, causing endless trouble. I knew it was a warning, a precise and cold strike from that vast empire. Jessica knew, too. She didn't cry or confront her father. She just silently listened to my phone call, then came up behind me and hugged me tight, her cheek against my back. I'm sorry, Ethan. Her voice was muffled, full of guilt and a cold anger. I'm sorry you and your mom are going through this. I turned around and looked at her slightly red eyes. The anxiety I'd felt for my mother strangely calmed down. I wiped away a tear from the corner of her eye. "It's not your fault," I said. "It was her father's doing, but I knew the root cause was my choice to stay with her." "I'll fix it," she said, looking up, her eyes flashing with a ruthlessness that didn't match her sweet appearance. "I won't let anyone hurt you or the people you care about." She didn't say how, but I knew that a silent war had just escalated between her and her father, with me as the cause. A few days later, the situation with my mother inexplicably improved. The troubles vanished overnight. My mom hesitantly asked me on the phone if I had met some important person. I vaguely brushed it off, knowing it was Jessica's doing. She didn't boast about her victory. She just casually mentioned it at dinner one night. "Your mom's fine now. No one will bother her again." She put a piece of food on my plate, her eyes soft, as if she had just done a trivial thing. In that moment, a complex warmth spread through me. I knew her methods might not be entirely righteous, and her protection was toxic, but undeniably, under the cold, powerful external pressure, she was the only one who would use her own power to shield me. This feeling of being protected by a powerful force, at all costs, was like a drug, making any remaining thoughts of escape even fainter. That night, we were leaning against the headboard. She was on her tablet, dealing with some business documents I didn't understand, her brow furrowed. I watched her focus profile, the light casting a soft shadow under her long eyelashes. Without her usual extreme affection, she now exuded a calm, sharp intelligence of someone in power. On an impulse, I reached out and gently smoothed her furrowed brow. She was startled for a moment, then looked up at me, her expression softening like melting snow. "What is it?" she asked, her voice a little tired. "Nothing," I said. "You just look tired." She put down her tablet, turned to me, and pressed my hand against her cheek, nuzzling it like a cat seeking comfort. "A little," she admitted, then rested her head on my shoulder. "But when I think about how it's to protect you, I don't feel tired anymore." She looked up, her eyes hazy, full of a complete trust and surrender. "Ethan, we're really us now, right? Facing everything together." I looked at my reflection in her eyes. It was only me, a me that had been reshaped, protected, and was about to sink with her. "Yes," I heard myself say clearly. She smiled a pure, satisfied smile. She leaned in and kissed me. The kiss was different from any before. It was no longer a one-sided taking or declaration, but a shared understanding, an entanglement that went bone deep. We were like two companions fighting back-to-back in a dark forest, exchanging silent vows and comfort with our lips. When the kiss ended, we were breathing heavily in the dim light. Her eyes were burning, a mix of obsessive love and a shared defiance against the outside world. "I love you, Ethan," she whispered, her fingers clutching my shirt. "No one can separate us. No one." I looked at her, at the woman who had dragged me into the abyss and then shielded me from the storm. The stagnant water of my heart seemed to ripple with a strange, painful emotion from this extreme, twisted bond. I leaned down and kissed her again, my actions speaking for me. Yes, we were co-conspirators. Together, we had murdered any possibility of a normal future. And now, in the ruins of love, we held each other, falling into an eternity that belonged only to us. The direct confrontation with her father was like a sudden cold snap. Though we managed to weather it, a certain chill lingered in the air. I knew the king wouldn't just give up. The current peace was merely the eye of the storm. But strangely, I didn't feel much fear. A sense of calm, born from hitting rock bottom, or perhaps from completely tying my fate to the woman beside me, had settled over me. Jessica seemed very pleased with this new state of mind. She no longer needed to be on constant alert for my potential escape and could focus more on fortifying our stronghold and preparing for the next inevitable wave of attacks from her father. She began to integrate me into her life in a more systematic way, or rather, into the fringes of the kingdom she controlled. She gave me a new title, her personal assistant, not the kind that serves tea, but one that helps her manage her independent assets and investments, separate from her family's main business. An art fund, some angel investments in tech startups, and a few environmental charity projects. "Ethan, take a look at this project proposal," she would say, handing me her tablet, her eyes full of trust and a subtle guidance. I think their technology has potential, but their business model seems flawed. Take a look with your expertise. I knew this was still part of her taming process, giving me a place in her world, making me work to generate a sense of belonging and value, thus making her exquisite cage even more unbreakable. I took the tablet and started to seriously study the dense data and analysis. At first, I had to force myself to concentrate, but gradually I actually started to see things. I wasn't stupid, I just never had the opportunity to deal with this level of business before. I would point out logical flaws in the report or suggest ideas for user positioning and marketing. Jessica would listen intently, her eyes shining. "Ethan, you're a genius. Why didn't I think of that?" Her praise was lavish, with a proud "my baby" is the best tone. Then, she would adjust her investment strategy or make new demands on the project team based on my suggestions. After a few times, I had actually helped her avoid a few potential investment traps, and one small project even made a comeback because of my advice. A strange sense of accomplishment grew within me, not because of my own abilities, but because in this isolated system she had built, I seemed to have found a new value for my existence. My social life was also being rebuilt by her in a more advanced way. She no longer crudely cut off my contact with the outside world, but guided me towards higher quality social interactions. She would take me to small, exclusive salons organized by the more open-minded younger generation of her circle with themes of technology, art, or charity. There, I met not the hypocritical, scrutinizing elders from the dinner party, but young people who, at least on the surface, didn't display much class superiority. They would discuss the latest tech trends with me, chat about a pioneering artist's work, and even invite me to visit a lab with them next time. Of course, I knew that these people were either carefully selected by Jessica or had been given some kind of hint on how to interact with me, Jessica Miller's boyfriend. They were polite and friendly, but there was always a subtle barrier, a reminder of the invisible line between us. But compared to complete isolation, this was a blessing. After one salon in the car on the way home, Jessica leaned against me and whispered, "Ethan, do you like these kinds of gatherings? Much more interesting than dinner with my boring relatives, right?" I looked down at her, her eyes clear, with a hint of a plea for approval. "Yeah, it's nice," I said, unconsciously twirling a strand of her hair. She understood. She knew that complete isolation would drive a person mad, so she gave me a carefully sterilized and filtered outside world, a safe social sandbox, making me think I was still breathing without knowing that the air I was breathing was her own special blend. She smiled, satisfied, and kissed my chin. "I'm glad you like it. We'll go to more of these in the future." Then, as if remembering something, she took a velvet box out of her small purse and opened it. Inside was a pair of cufflinks, simple in design, but of exquisite material and craftsmanship. The deep blue gemstones on them shimmered in the passing city lights, a color similar to the smartwatch on my wrist. "For you," she said, holding the box out to me, her eyes sparkling. "The gems are from the same stone as the one on my watch. See, even our accessories match." I looked at the cufflinks, then at the watch on her wrist that monitored my vitals and location, and felt nothing. It even felt right. I took the box. "Thanks, they're beautiful." She helped me put them on, adjusting my shirt cuffs with a gentle, meticulous touch. Then she held my hand next to hers, with our matching source jewelry, looking at the corresponding blue glow, a look of almost devout satisfaction on her face. "This way, no matter where you are, you'll always have my mark on you," she murmured. I looked at her, at our clasped hands, at the blue light that symbolized absolute control and a twisted bond. I suddenly realized that she and I were like two intertwined vines, her roots already deep in my flesh, my spirit. To forcibly separate us would mean mutual destruction. I squeezed her hand, leaned down, and kissed her wrist where the monitoring watch was, then up her arm, and finally her lips. The kiss was not lustful, but more of a confirmation, a stamp of approval on our symbiotic state. She trembled slightly under my kiss, then responded with even more passion. Outside the car window, the city lights were bright and colorful, and we, in this moving, safe fortress, held each other tight, like two astronauts sharing the same life support system, floating in the endless, lonely universe called love. The calm days were like a gilded illusion. I gradually got used to my role as assistant, even able to offer suggestions that impressed Jessica and her circle during investment discussions. The feeling of being needed and recognized was like a slow poison, making me almost forget where I was. Jessica became even more dependent on me. Her gaze, besides the intense love and possession, now held a genuine admiration. We were like a truly like-minded couple, managing her little kingdom independent of her family. Until one of her investments, a biotech startup, ran into big trouble. The company was focused on a cutting-edge gene editing application with huge potential, a project Jessica valued greatly. But suddenly, the core team was poached by a well-connected overseas capital firm, with some core data and research results also suspected of being leaked. The company was instantly paralyzed, the huge initial investment on the verge of being lost. This was not normal business competition. The methods were too precise, too ruthless, hitting right at the heart of the project. Jessica received the news while we were having breakfast. Her face instantly turned pale, her hand holding the fork trembling slightly, but she quickly forced herself to calm down. "It's fine," she said, forcing a smile, but her eyes were cold. "I can handle it." She started going out frequently, taking calls in private, her tone sometimes anxious, sometimes firm. She would come home exhausted, collapsing into my arms for comfort, like a wounded animal licking its wounds. Watching her struggle, the numbness of my captivity was for the first time replaced by a strong urge to do something. I wasn't just a helpless pet to be protected under her wing. At least in this matter, I felt I could help. I used all the contacts I had accumulated as a coder, the gurus scattered across the internet, skilled in data tracking and information mining. I bypassed Jessica's possibly compromised investigation channels and tried to track the connection between the core team members and the overseas capital firm in my own way. It was not easy. The other side had clearly taken precautions. But just as I was about to give up, an anonymous information packet, sent through layers of encryption, arrived in an old, abandoned email account of mine. My palms were sweating as I opened the compressed file. It wasn't direct evidence, but fragmented information. The recent cash flow of the overseas capital firm, its hidden connection to a longtime competitor of the Miller Group, and a few blurry photos of Jessica's father, David Miller, meeting privately with the head of that competitor. It was like a lightning bolt cutting through the fog. This wasn't just a business attack. It was a precise strike against Jessica from within. It was her father trying to force her to submit, to give me up, and to return to the path he had set for her. My heart pounded, a mix of anger, fear, and a strange excitement churning in my chest. I didn't tell Jessica right away. I needed to calm down. That night, Jessica came home later than usual, her face pale, with dark circles under her eyes. She didn't say anything, just quietly showered and crawled into bed, her back to me. I looked at her thin back, thinking of her father's stern face in the files, the contemptuous looks at the dinner party, all the attacks she had deflected from me. A strong sense of protectiveness, mixed with an anger at that cold world, surged within me. I reached out and gently turned her stiff body to face me. She had her eyes closed, her long eyelashes wet, as if she had been crying before she came home. "Jessica," I whispered. She slowly opened her eyes, no longer with the usual obsessive and strong gaze, but with a deep exhaustion and a hint of despair. "I know everything," I said. Her body stiffened, her gaze instantly sharp and wary. "What do you know?" "About the company," I said, looking at her, enunciating each word. "It was your father." Her pupils contracted. She shot up, her voice a mix of panic and anger. "Who told you? Did you investigate me?" "I'm helping you." I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at me, my voice rising. "He's using these tactics to force you. Don't you see?" "So what if I do?" She shook off my hands, her emotions suddenly spiraling out of control, tears streaming down her face. "What can I do? Go to war with him? He's my father, and he's the one who can easily crush us." She finally voiced her deepest fear. She could fight the whole world for me, but when part of that world was her own flesh and blood, a man who held absolute power, her obsession and madness had met an insurmountable wall. Watching her break down, my anger suddenly dissipated, leaving only a deep, aching pity. I pulled her back into my arms and held her tight. "Don't be afraid." I patted her back, my voice low but with a firmness I'd never felt before. "You still have me." She looked up from my arms, her eyes blurry, as if seeing me for the first time. I leaned down and kissed the tears from her face, a gentle, precious gesture. The kiss was not a submission, not a surrender, but of a defiant reassurance, and a declaration of war. "He won't succeed," I whispered against her lips. "We'll figure something out together." She was stunned. Then, like a drowning person grabbing a lifeline, she hugged me back with all her might, her kisses frantic and desperate. The kiss was full of despair, dependence, and the excitement of finding an ally, more intense and chaotic than any before, salty with tears and her familiar, now comforting sweet scent. We tangled in the dim light, like two castaways clinging to each other in a storm, drawing the courage to fight the world from the warmth of our bodies and the touch of our lips. In that moment, I was no longer a passive prisoner. I had become her only knight, and she, my twisted princess, for whom I would willingly go to war. A crack had appeared, and a faint light was struggling to shine through from between our pressed chests. That out-of-control night marked a fundamental shift in my relationship with Jessica. It was no longer just about control and submission. A twisted sense of camaraderie, born from facing a desperate situation together, had been forged between us. She stopped hiding the company's crisis from me. The next morning, her eyes were slightly swollen, but her gaze was clear as she laid out all the relevant documents in front of me, including some more secretive information she had gathered through her private channels. "Ethan," she said, pointing to the data flows and complex relationship diagrams on her tablet, her voice laced with a do-or-die trust. "We're real accomplices now." The word accomplices, coming from her, sounded strangely intimate and resolute. I looked at her and nodded. We began to analyze the situation like true partners in crime. The goal of the opposition was to cripple the project, break Jessica's funding chain, and prove her willfulness and mistake to her father. A head-on confrontation was out of the question. They took the core technology, but we still have the application direction and some of the preclinical data, I pointed out on the screen. They can't replicate that in a short time. And the fact that they're acting so rashly, so dirtily, means they're scared too. Scared that we might actually succeed. Jessica's eyes lit up as if she had grasped a lifeline. "So you're saying?" "We switched tracks," I said, laying out the idea I had been mulling over all night. They poached the team to target the high-end medical market. We can use our existing data and direction to pivot to the consumer-grade health monitoring market. It has a lower barrier to entry and a broader market. The profit margins might be smaller, but it will generate cash flow faster, save the company, and most importantly, disrupt their plans. This was the first time I had presented my thoughts and strategies to her so clearly, not as a subordinate suggestion, but as part of the decision-making process. Jessica listened intently, her fingers tapping on the table, her eyes growing brighter. Finally, she slammed her hand on the table. "Yes, they want us to die in the lab, but we'll go out and live in the market." She excitedly threw her arms around my neck and gave me a hard kiss on the cheek. "Ethan, you're a genius." This kiss was not possessive or lustful. It was full of the exhilaration of finding a solution and admiration. The following days were a whirlwind of intense work. The apartment became our temporary command center. I was responsible for replanning the technical roadmap and organizing the data, using my past experience and contacts to find new technical partners. Jessica, in turn, mobilized all the resources and connections she could, independent of her father's influence, to open up new supply chains and market channels. We often worked late into the night, the coffee table littered with documents, the light from our computer screens reflecting on our tired but excited faces. We would argue over technical details and celebrate small victories with a high five. After a marathon 16-hour video conference to win over a key component supplier, we were both completely exhausted. The moment the meeting ended, we collapsed on the sofa, looked at each other, and smiled. Jessica leaned her head on my shoulder, her voice hoarse. "Ethan, I used to think that locking you up so you could only look at me was all I wanted. But now I realize fighting those annoying people out there with you, it feels better." Her words stirred something in me. I looked down at her, leaning against me so trustingly, strands of her hair stuck to her sweaty forehead. She was exhausted, but her eyes were shining. I put my arm around her and pulled her closer. "Yeah," I said, running my fingers through her hair. She didn't say anything more, just snuggled deeper into my arms, closed her eyes, and her breathing soon became even. Just as I thought she was asleep, she murmured, her voice thick with sleep, "Ethan, when this is all over, let's get married." My body tensed slightly. Married? The word was like a boulder dropped into the chaotic lake of my mind. Not resistance, but a dazed sense of finality. It was as if I had been walking in an endless tunnel, and she had just pointed out the exit, an eternal exit she had built with her own hands. I didn't answer right away. She didn't seem to be waiting for an answer. She just nuzzled against me like a kitten finding its warm spot and mumbled that way, "You'll be mine forever, legally." Her voice trailed off, replaced by the sound of steady breathing. I looked down at her, at the faint smile on her lips, even in her sleep, at her defenseless form curled up in my arms. This obsessive, crazy woman, who at this moment seemed so fragile and helpless. I tightened my arms around her, leaned down, and placed a light, almost imperceptible kiss on her forehead, a kiss that held a certain promise. Outside, the city lights were bright, and we, on this smokeless battlefield, held each other tight. The bond of accomplices, it seemed, was stronger and more intoxicating than the chains of love. Jessica's sleepy suggestion of marriage planted a seed in my mind. It didn't sprout immediately, but it subtly changed the texture of our bond. I was no longer just her accomplice dragged into the fight. A more active desire to protect her began to grow in the long-dormant soil of my heart. Watching her exhaust herself over the company, seeing her force a smile for me when she was clearly stressed, I realized for the first time just how fragile this seemingly powerful, obsessive woman could be. And right now, it seemed I was the only one who could protect her. Our new strategy was a difficult uphill battle. The pressure from her father was relentless. A supplier we had to deal with suddenly backed out. A crucial market permit was endlessly delayed. Even some of our partners started to act cagey. Jessica became more irritable, but she tried to hide it from me. Only her constantly furrowed brow and occasional vacant stares betrayed her anxiety. One day, a key distributor stood us up again. The person on the phone was evasive, clearly under some kind of pressure. After hanging up, Jessica threw her phone onto the sofa, her chest heaving, her eyes instantly red, but she stubbornly bit her lip to keep the tears from falling. "It's fine," she said, forcing a smile that was more painful than crying. "I'll figure something else out." Looking at her, so desperately trying to be strong, I felt a sharp pang in my chest. I walked over to her, and instead of just hugging her, I reached out, gently smoothed her furrowed brow, and cupped her face, making her look at me. "Jessica," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "Look at me." She looked up, her eyes blurry with tears. "Tell me, besides this distributor, is there a backup? Or is it possible to bypass him and go directly to the retailers?" My gaze was focused, my tone firm and unwavering. She stared at me, stunned by my sudden assertiveness, and answered instinctively, "There is a backup, but we don't have a strong relationship. As for the retailers, we'd have to build a new team, and we don't have time." "Give me the backup's contact information," I said, "and give me the market research on the retailers. I'll figure it out." Her eyes widened. "Ethan, I can't watch you do this alone." I cut her off, my thumb brushing away a tear from the corner of her eye. We agreed. Together. In that moment, I saw a progression of emotions in her eyes. Shock, confusion, then a wave of immense gratitude and dependence like melting ice. She threw herself into my arms, clinging to my waist, and finally let herself cry, her sobs no longer suppressed. "Ethan, I'm so tired," she choked out, like a child who had finally found a safe harbor. I held her, feeling her body tremble, and the stagnant water of my heart felt like it had been injected with molten lava. A strange, new emotion, a mix of responsibility and a desire to protect, surged through me. "Leave it to me," I whispered, my voice firmer than ever before. I started pulling every string I could. I contacted old colleagues, even a few friends who had climbed the corporate ladder. I might be able to help. I swallowed my pride and made call after call, facing rejection after rejection, but I didn't give up. At the same time, I didn't stop trying to find the anonymous source of the information. I needed to know if this Cameron was a friend or a foe. In my spare time, I meticulously traced the path of the message like I used to trace bugs in code, analyzing every possible node. A few days later, late at night, I finally found a faint clue. All traces seemed to lead to a nondescript IT security department within the Miller Group. A name surfaced, Cameron Moss. Why would this person help me? Or rather, help Jessica? Before I could dig any deeper, some good news came. One of my old friends had actually managed to connect us with a key person at the backup distributor. They had agreed to meet with us in 2 days. When I told Jessica, she was staring blankly at her computer in the study. She looked up, her eyes instantly lighting up like stars. She shot up, ran around the desk, and jumped into my arms, planting a hard kiss on my lips. Ethan, you're amazing. Her joy was palpable, the gloom of the past few days completely gone. The kiss was full of a post-disaster excitement and pure happiness. She cupped my face, her eyes shining with a mix of love, possession, and an undisguised admiration. I knew it. My Ethan is the best, she exclaimed, peppering my face with kisses. I held her waist, enduring her enthusiastic attack, a smile spreading across my own face. This feeling of being needed depended on, even worshipped by her. It was as intoxicating as the strongest liquor. That night, we went to bed early for the first time in weeks. Lying in bed, she was wrapped around me like an octopus, whispering in my ear, Ethan, when this is all over, let's really get married, okay? I want everyone to know that you're mine. This time, I didn't hesitate. I found her lips in the darkness and gave her a long, gentle kiss. The kiss was no longer a desperate entanglement, nor a confirmation of our alliance. It was a promise, a vow of protection. The moment I stepped on the battlefield for her, the twisted bond of our love was infused with a new, more complex and resilient strength. I was her prisoner, her accomplice, and now, it seemed, I was also her one and only willing guardian. And as for the mysterious Cameron, I held Jessica, already asleep in my arms, tighter. In the darkness, my eyes sharpened. Anyone who wanted to hurt her would have to go through me first. The night before the meeting with Mr. Wong, the distributor, the air in the apartment was thick with tension. It was quiet, save for the rustling of papers and the soft clicks of our keyboards. We both knew how much was riding on this. Jessica was more anxious than usual, pacing back and forth in the living room, picking up her water glass only to put it down again, her gaze distant. I knew she was at her breaking point. This wasn't just about a project. It was about her proving herself to her father, to everyone. I put down the market analysis report I was reading and stood in her path. Stop pacing, I said, taking her cold hands in mine. Take a break. She looked up, her eyes filled with a frantic uncertainty. Ethan, I am scared. What if tomorrow? There is no what if. I cut her off, my voice steady and firm. We've prepared for this. We have the data, the plan, the counterarguments. We've gone over it a dozen times. Mr. Wong may be our backup, but his company is expanding, and our product fits his needs perfectly. As long as we perform as planned, our chances of success are over 70%. I had never spoken to her with such confidence and authority before. She stared at me, the panic in her eyes slowly replaced by a strange sense of calm. She squeezed my hand, her fingers still cold but no longer trembling. Okay, she whispered, resting her head on my shoulder. It's so good to have you here, Ethan. I put my arms around her, feeling the tension slowly seep out of her body. We just stood there in the middle of the living room, holding each other like two travelers seeking warmth before a storm. After a moment, she looked up, her eyes sparkling. Ethan, we haven't tried on your suit for tomorrow yet, have we? Go put on for me. I knew she was just trying to distract herself, to ease the tension. I nodded and went to the bedroom to change into the perfectly tailored dark gray suit she had prepared for me. When I came out, her eyes lit up. She walked over and, like the most discerning stylist, started adjusting my collar and cuffs, her touch gentle and meticulous. Her fingers grazed the collar of my shirt, finally resting on the blue gemstone cufflinks of my wrist. So handsome, she murmured, her fingertips tracing the cool surface of the gemstone. She then smoothed down an imaginary wrinkle on my suit. My Ethan looks good in anything. Her gaze lingered on me, full of an undisguised admiration and an almost obsessive possession. Then, her eyes slowly traveled up to meet mine. In a warm light of the living room, her face was soft, but her eyes were deep like a swirling vortex. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice laced with a mesmerizing magic. "Tomorrow, you're not just going as my assistant, are you?" I looked at her, meeting her gaze. "No, you're going as my man," she said, enunciating each word as if confirming a fact or making a declaration. "To show everyone that the man Jessica Miller chose belongs anywhere, deserves everything." Her words sent a jolt through me, a mix of responsibility, belonging, and the thrill of being so completely trusted by her surged through my chest. I reached out, pulled her closer, and looked down at her. I know. We were so close I could feel her breath on my skin. She stood on her toes, her moist gaze fixed on my lips, a silent invitation, a desperate longing for confirmation. I didn't make her wait. I lowered my head and kissed her. The kiss was unlike any before. It was not of desperate surrender, nor of a shared alliance, nor of a comforting promise. It was a kiss of defiant determination, of a shared battle cry, of a wild, primal vitality and possession born from immense pressure. My tongue forcefully parted her lips, delving into the familiar warmth, tangling with hers with an undeniable power. Her hands clutched the lapels of my suit, as if trying to merge herself into my very bones. Her response passionate and clumsy, full of a do-or-die madness. The kiss held the fear of the unknown tomorrow, the desperation of a final stand, and the most primitive, profound confirmation of each other's existence. We were like two people dancing on a cliff's edge, drawing the courage to leap from the touch of her lips. The air was filled with our ragged breaths and the soft rustle of fabric. Only when our lungs burned did we finally break apart, gasping for air. Her lips were red and swollen, her eyes hazy, her cheeks flushed a beautiful crimson. She leaned against me, breathing heavily. I held her, feeling her rapid heartbeat against my chest, in sync with my own. "Ethan." She looked up, her eyes wet, full of a complete dependence and surrender. "Tomorrow, I'm putting everything in your hands." I looked at her, at the woman who had dragged me into this abyss and then made me find my purpose in it. The last shred of confusion and hesitation in my heart was incinerated in that fiery kiss. I leaned down and placed a solemn, gentle kiss on her forehead. Okay, tonight, we were each other's only armor and weakness. Tomorrow, we would go to war together. The car ride to meet Mr. Wong was silent. Jessica held my hand tightly, her fingertips still cool. She didn't speak, just glanced at me occasionally, her eyes a mix of nerves, dependence, and a decisive trust. I squeezed her hand back, my grip steady. Watching the cityscape fly by, my mind was strangely calm. I was nervous, but it was a focused kind of nervousness, all distractions stripped away. For her, I couldn't lose this battle. The meeting was at a discreet but elegant private tea house. Mr. Wong was younger than we expected, in his early 40s, with shrewd eyes and the cautious air of a seasoned businessman. After some brief pleasantries, we got down to business. I, on Jessica's behalf, clearly laid out our revised product positioning, market prospects, and the win-win model for our partnership. I didn't exaggerate. I relied on solid data, clear logic, and a confident presentation of our technological advantages. Mr. Wong listened attentively, occasionally interjecting with sharp questions. I could sense his deep skepticism beneath the initial politeness. It wasn't his fault. He had undoubtedly been pressured by David Miller. Just as the negotiations seemed to stall, Mr. Wong's phone rang. His expression changed as he listened, and he shot us a complicated look, his gaze lingering on me for a long moment. When he hung up, he was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted, less scrutinizing, more meaningful. "Mr. Hayes," he said, looking at me, his fingers drumming on the table. "It seems Miss Miller has a hidden ace up her sleeve." My heart skipped a beat, but my face remained impassive. "You flatter me, Mr. Wong." He smiled, not pursuing the topic but changed course. I've listened to your proposal. There are risks, but the opportunity is greater. I'm not one to be led by the nose. I value the potential of the project and the team itself. He paused, his gaze sweeping between Jessica and me, finally settling on me. I'm in. My people will follow up on the details. A sudden breakthrough. I felt Jessica's body relax beside me. Her hand under the table squeezed mine so tightly her nails dug into my palm, a gesture of pure, unadulterated joy. I maintained my composure, raised my teacup, and nodded to Mr. Wong. Thank you for your trust, Mr. Wong. We won't let you down. When we got back to the car and the door closed, Jessica's tightly wound tension finally snapped. She threw herself at me, her arms wrapped around my neck, her voice trembling with an overwhelming excitement and choked with emotion. Ethan, we did it. Did you hear him? He agreed. She looked up and, ignoring the driver in the front seat, kissed me. The kiss was a whirlwind of post-disaster joy, relieved excitement, and an undisguised admiration and love for me. Her kisses were wild and passionate, a wildfire that threatened to consume me. I kissed her back, feeling her hot tears on my face, the massive weight that had been on my chest finally crashing to the ground. I wrapped my arm around her waist and deepened the kiss, as if we were sharing the sweet taste of a hard-won victory. Back at the apartment, the excitement still lingered in the air. Jessica was like a happy bird, twirling in the living room before throwing herself into my arms again. Ethan, you were amazing. How did you do it? That last phone call, Mr. Wong got. Did you arrange that? She asked, her eyes shining with curiosity. I shook my head, my expression turning serious. No, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. I told her about my investigation into the anonymous informant, Cameron, and my faint clues. Jessica listened, her excitement fading, her brow furrowed. Cameron? The tech lead from the IT security department? I remember him. He's brilliant, but a bit of a loner. He never gets involved in office politics. Why would he help us? That's what I want to know, I said. But regardless of his motives, he helped us this time. That phone call, Mr. Wong was likely related to some inside information he provided about Miller Group's competitor trying to monopolize the channel and suppress new technologies. Mr. Wong is a smart man. He doesn't want to be used as a pawn, and he doesn't want to miss a real opportunity. Jessica nodded thoughtfully, then a familiar, sweet, and obsessive smile returned to her face. She wrapped her arms around my neck and pecked me on the lips. It doesn't matter who helped us. What matters is that you seized the opportunity, Ethan. You saved my project. Her gaze was intense, full of a complete trust and possession. I knew it. My Ethan can do anything. Looking at the deified reflection of myself in her eyes, I knew that this victory was not just due to my efforts and the luck of Cameron's help, but also because the absolute pressure from her father had backfired, sparking a rebellious streak and independent judgment in pragmatic businessmen like Mr. Wong. But right now, I didn't want to spoil her mood or delve into the complex cause and effect. I looked down at her radiant face, a sense of indescribable satisfaction and belonging filling my heart. I won, not for myself, but for her. This feeling of being needed depended on and successfully responding to it. It was more intoxicating than any simple freedom. I scooped her up into my arms, eliciting a surprised squeal from her, followed by a peal of laughter. Time to celebrate, I asked, a smirk on my face. She tightened her arms around my neck, her gaze sultry and enticing, and whispered in my ear, her breath warm, "Whatever you say, my hero." The sun was shining brightly outside, casting a warm glow on our intertwined figures. The smoke of battle had temporarily cleared, and our bond, after the shared victory, was now tighter, deeper, and had seeped into our very bones. With Mr. Wong's partnership secured, fresh capital flowed in, and the project was resurrected like a patient receiving a life-saving blood transfusion. The low-pressure system that had hung over our apartment for a month vanished, and even the sunlight seemed brighter. Jessica's mood was euphoric. She was no longer just an obsessive lover or a partner in crime. She was like a bird that had finally gathered enough material to build the perfect nest. And that nest was our wedding. Ethan, look at this venue. A lakeside estate, so private. She was curled up in my lap with her tablet, the screen showing a fairy tale-like castle surrounded by green lawns and a blue lake. And look at this, the designer just sent over the sketch for my wedding dress. It's a starry sky theme with 9,999 hand-sewn diamonds to symbolize our eternal love. She swiped through the pictures, her eyes glazed over with a dreamy look, as if she could already see herself in the dress. I held her, watching her flushed, excited face, listening to her endless chatter about every single detail, from the font on the invitations to the playlist for the reception, from the type of flowers on the tables to the brand of the party favors. Everything had to be the best, the most unique, the most representative of our love. Most of the time, I just listened quietly, nodding occasionally, or giving generic answers like, "That's nice," or whatever you like. It wasn't that I was being dismissive. I just realized that I didn't really have a say, nor did I need one. This wedding was more of a grand declaration ceremony that she had meticulously planned. A declaration to her father, to everyone who had ever doubted or looked down on us, and especially to herself, that her choice was unquestionable, and that she had won. She had gotten her forever. And I, the exhibit, just needed to be quiet, cooperative, and smile the happy, controlled smile that possessed at the appropriate times. The feeling was strange. On one hand, I enjoyed being so carefully planned into her future, the sense of security and being completely owned and cared for having seeped into my very bones. On the other hand, a tiny, remote corner of my heart felt estranged. Emptiness. "Ethan, why are you so quiet?" She seemed to have noticed my momentary lapse in attention, her eyes holding a hint of scrutiny. "Don't you like any of this?" I quickly composed myself and kissed her forehead, a practiced, natural gesture. "No, I was just thinking. It's so grand. Won't you be tired?" "Tired? Of course not." Her attention was immediately diverted, her excitement returning. "This is our wedding, a once-in-a-lifetime event. I want everyone to remember this day, to remember that you are my husband." She touched the star tattoo at the base of my left ring finger, her fingertips gently tracing it. "And soon, you'll be wearing the wedding ring I designed, right next to this tattoo. Let's see who dares to question that you're mine then." Her tone was a mix of childlike cruelty and absolute possession. I looked at the fire in her eyes, and that tiny bit of emptiness was instantly filled with a twisted satisfaction. Yeah, question. What was there to question? From my body to my soul, from my past to my future, I'd already been branded by her. This wedding was just a formality, a public announcement of that fact. "Okay, whatever you want," I heard myself say, my voice submissive. She smiled, satisfied, and leaned in to kiss me. The kiss was as sweet as honey, full of the excitement of a dream about to come true. Her tongue traced the outline of my lips, then delved deeper, a gentle but firm dominance, as if practicing the possessive kiss of the wedding ceremony. When the kiss ended, she was breathless, leaning against my chest, her fingers still restlessly playing with the buttons of my pajamas. "Oh, Ethan." She suddenly remembered something, her eyes sparkling. "The wedding invitations. I want to write our names myself. Your Ethan Hayes, my Jessica Miller side by side, in the most expensive gold ink." She described it, her face glowing with a dreamlike radiance. I looked at her, at this woman who was about to nail me down into her life forever with an absurdly lavish, obsessively detailed wedding. The wasteland of my heart, where I had once struggled, was now a beautiful, high-walled private garden, irrigated by her obsessive love. And I was the sole, eternal flower in that garden. I said, pulling her closer, my chin resting on the top of her head. "Your handwriting will be the most beautiful." The night grew darker outside, and our future was being built brick by brick, according to the blueprint of love she had drawn. The castle called marriage was about to be completed, and I was its one and only willing prisoner and king. The wedding preparations moved forward at a breakneck pace, a well-oiled machine driven by Jessica's tireless energy. She seemed to have an endless supply of it, dragging me to designer studios, jewelry stores, and venues during the day, and poring over thick planning binders late into the night. I became her perfect mannequin and yes man, trying on suits, getting measured, selecting matching cufflinks and ties. Her control over my appearance was meticulous, down to the curve of my hair and the width of the ring on my pinky finger. Ethan, look, the sapphire on this pin is almost the exact same color as the starry sky diamonds on my wedding dress, she said excitedly, holding a sample from the designer against my chest, her eyes shining. When we stand together, everyone will know we're a set. She loved creating these secret connections, playing a matching game only we understood, using these expensive details to bind us even more tightly on a visual level. I stood there cooperatively, letting her arrange me, my inner wasteland long accustomed to this constant branding. Occasionally, while waiting for a designer to make adjustments, I would look out the studio's massive floor-to-ceiling windows at the hurried pedestrians on the street below. They were rushing to work, worrying about trivial matters, possessing a mundane freedom instead of worries that I once had, but now felt impossibly distant. Ethan, what are you looking at? Jessica's voice would always chime in at just the right moment, a hint of tension in it. She would walk over, naturally linking her arm through mine, her body close, and whisper in a voice only I could hear, "It's so gray and boring out there. Look at the bouquet I chose. Lilies of the valley and white tulips, symbolizing purity and eternal love. Do you like it?" Her breath was warm against my ear, a familiar sweet scent of absolute possession. I would pull my gaze away from the window and look at the tablet she was holding. The bouquet on the screen was so exquisitely beautiful, it hardly seemed real. It was certainly more appealing than the drab street scene outside. "I like it," I'd say, leaning down to give her a light kiss on the cheek. She would purr like a contented cat, rubbing against my shoulder. Everything seemed to be moving smoothly towards her perfect wedding. Until that afternoon, I was at home alone, reviewing the wedding guest list, when an encrypted, anonymous email silently appeared in my old, abandoned inbox. My heart leaped. "Cameron." The email was brief, without any greeting or signature, just a single line. "Be careful with the beverages at the wedding. Source, a subsidiary of Miller Holdings, through an irregular procurement channel." A bucket of ice water was poured over my head. I froze in front of the computer. The beverages? The beverages at the wedding? David Miller. He was stooping to this, interfering with his own daughter's wedding. What was he planning? To cause a scene? To embarrass me? Or something more sinister? A chill ran down my spine. I thought that after the project crisis was resolved, we would at least have a temporary truce. I never expected his methods to be so low, so ruthless. "Ethan, how's the guest list coming along?" Jessica's voice came from the doorway. She had just finished a video conference and looked a little tired, but she still smiled sweetly when she saw me. I instinctively, reflexively, closed the email window and switched back to the guest list spreadsheet. My heart was pounding, but I forced my face to remain calm. "Almost done," I said, getting up and walking towards her, naturally taking her bag. "Just a few distant relatives I'm not sure how to address. I was waiting for you." She was completely oblivious, leaning against me and rubbing her temples. I'll look at it after my shower. I'm so tired. Getting married is so much work. If it wasn't for her." She trailed off, but I knew the rest of the sentence. If it wasn't to declare our relationship to the world. I held her, feeling her soft, dependent body, but my mind was a chaotic mess. The anonymous warning was like a thorn, piercing the sweet, peaceful bubble we were in. Should I tell her? Knowing her, she would fly into a rage, maybe even confront her father directly. But that would just add fuel to the fire, possibly leading to even more unpredictable consequences. The wedding was so close. Any disruption would mar her perfect blueprint, something she would never tolerate. And why was Cameron helping me again? What was his motive? Was he just unhappy with David Miller's actions? Or was there something else? Countless questions swirled in my head. "Ethan, what's wrong?" "Your heart is beating so fast," Jessica said, looking up from my chest, her hand on my heart. I looked down at her clear, slightly suspicious eyes, took a deep breath, and forced down the turmoil. She couldn't know. Not yet. I took her hand from my chest and kissed it, forcing a helpless smile. Maybe a little pre-wedding jitters. This excuse clearly pleased her. She giggled and stood on her toes to kiss my lips, her eyes playful and triumphant. "Nervous now, are we? Don't worry. I've got everything under control. You just have to be a good boy and be my handsome groom on the big day." Her kiss and her words were like warm silk, temporarily covering the cold thorn. I kissed her back, a kiss of concealment and determination. Okay, I whispered. This wedding was her meticulously woven golden cage, about to be tied with the most beautiful ribbon. And I, while savoring this extreme sweetness, also had to learn to hold up a protective umbrella for her in the unseen shadows. The warning had been received. The game was still on. Cameron's warning was a constant, nagging presence in my otherwise peaceful routine. Watching Jessica, still lost in the excitement of her wedding plans, her eyes shining as she looked at dress sketches, her head tilted as she listened to processional music, I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the dark possibility. Her world was black and white, her love and hate absolute. If she knew her father was tampering with the wedding beverages, I couldn't imagine the destructive force that would erupt from her obsessive heart. The wedding had to be perfect. That was her obsession, and it had become my mission. I had to handle this myself. I tried to contact Cameron again. This time, I didn't wait passively. Using the faint traces of the path from his last message and the bits of information about Miller Group's internal network I had picked up from being around Jessica, I pieced together a highly secure, hidden communication channel. I sent a short, heavily encrypted message. Proof? How to replace? Every minute I waited for a reply was agonizing. I had to act completely normal, helping Jessica taste wedding cakes, choosing the final gold foil for the invitations, while simultaneously keeping an eye on the secret channel. Jessica seemed to notice my occasional distraction, but she chalked it up to pre-wedding jitters and even found it endearing. One afternoon, in the car on the way back from the wedding planner's office, she leaned against me, her fingers toying with a button on my shirt. "Ethan," she whispered, "are you afraid that after we get married, I won't love you as much as I do now?" I was taken aback. I looked down at her. Her eyes held a rare, uncertain vulnerability. "Of course not," I said, holding her tighter, my voice more certain than I felt. "You'll always be like this. You'll only love me more." This pleased her. Her eyes crinkled into a smile. She felt she had gotten the reassurance she needed. She looked up and kissed my chin, then whispered in my ear, "Of course. You'll always be mine. And after we're married, there will be no escape." Her breath was a warm, sweet threat. I looked into her eyes, so full of dependence and possession, and the weight of the secret I was carrying seemed to lessen, diluted by her twisted love. 2 days later, Cameron's reply came. It was brief, with an encrypted data packet attached. Proof in packet. Purchase orders and logistics tracking. Replacement plan. Tomorrow night, 10 p.m., Warehouse B7. Someone will meet you. Risk is your own. I opened the packet. The evidence was clear, a trail of abnormal procurement and shipping for a batch of beverages from a subsidiary of Miller Holdings. The destination, our wedding venue. Time, place, contact method. It was all there, concise like a machine giving orders. I stared at the screen, my palms sweating. Risk is your own. That meant if I was caught, I would face the full wrath of David Miller. The consequences were unthinkable, but there was no turning back. The next day, I told Jessica I was having a last bachelor hurrah with my friends. The excuse was plausible, even a little cliche for a man about to get married. She was a little reluctant, pouting and giving me a deep, warning kiss, but she eventually agreed. "You have to be back by 10, she said, clinging to my arm, her eyes wide and pleading, "or I'll come find you and let all your friends know what a scary wife you have." I smiled and agreed, a heavy weight in my chest. At 9:50 that night, I followed Cameron's directions, avoiding all major surveillance cameras, and arrived at a warehouse district on the outskirts of the city. A man in work clothes, his cap pulled low, was waiting for me at Warehouse B7. He didn't say a word, just silently handed me a matching uniform and a hand truck. The warehouse was brightly lit, filled with all sorts of goods. We moved like real warehouse workers, following the order form to find a specially marked batch of beverages. We worked quickly and quietly, unloading the tainted batch and replacing it with an identical-looking one that Cameron had prepared. The whole process took less than 20 minutes. No conversation, just the sound of heavy breathing and the rustle of cardboard boxes. Sweat soaked my back. I couldn't tell if it was from nerves or exertion. When we were done, the man just nodded at me and disappeared into the depths of the shelves. I changed back into my own clothes, walked out of the warehouse district, and got into my car. Only then did my heart start to pound again. I looked at my pale face in a rearview mirror, a wave of post-adrenaline exhaustion washing over me. I did it. In the shadows, without anyone knowing, I had defused a bomb set to go off at her perfect wedding. I got back to the apartment right at 10. Jessica was on the sofa, looking at proofs of our engagement photos. She looked up the moment she heard the door, her eyes shining like a puppy waiting for its owner. "Back so soon," she said, tossing the tablet aside and running barefoot to throw herself into my arms. She sniffed me, then wrinkled her nose. You smell like smoke and beer. But since you're back on time, I'll forgive you." She wrapped her arms around my neck and stood on her toes to kiss me. The kiss was an inspection, then a long, relieved embrace. I held her tight, feeling her soft, trusting body. The tension and danger of the warehouse seemed like a distant dream. "Did you get everything taken care of?" she murmured between kisses. "Yeah," I whispered back, kissing her more deeply, drowning all my emotions in a kiss of post-disaster relief. She seemed to sense my unusual, almost predatory passion. She was surprised for a moment, then responded with even more fervor, her body clinging to me like a vine. In that moment, I was no longer passively receiving her love and control. In the unseen shadows, I had become her sole, silent protector. And this dark deed, it seemed, had dyed our bond a more complex and more unbreakable color. The beverage crisis sank without a trace, like a stone dropped into a deep pond. The final 24-hour countdown to the wedding began, and the air in the apartment was thick with a sweet, almost suffocating anticipation. Jessica was in a state of peak euphoria. She no longer left the apartment, instead holding court from the living room, a general commanding her troops through countless phone calls and video conferences, overseeing every last detail of the wedding venue. The angle of the flowers, the fold of the chair covers, the polish on the champagne glasses. Not a single flaw would be tolerated. I became her sole audience and emotional support. After a call confirming the band's playlist, she would throw herself into my arms for a quick, recharging kiss. When she was frustrated because a centerpiece wasn't the right shade, she would pull my hand to her chest, making me feel her racing heart until I calmed her with a kiss. "Ethan, I'm so nervous and so happy," she said, her head in my lap, looking up at me, her eyes like a handful of crushed diamonds. "Tomorrow, after tomorrow, you will be completely, utterly mine. The law, God, everyone, they will all be our witnesses." Her fingertips traced the star tattoo on my ring finger, where her custom-designed wedding ring would soon be. Her gaze was obsessive and feverish, as if this wasn't just a wedding, but a grand, eternal ritual of sacrifice and coronation. I stroked her hair, saying nothing. The wasteland of my heart, where I had once struggled, was now a place of deadened submission, even a twisted anticipation. Anticipation for the ceremony, for the final, strongest chain that would lock us together forever. In the evening, the wedding attire arrived after its final alterations. Mine was a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, and hers was the legendary starry sky wedding dress. She had me change first. As I walked out of the dressing room in the expensive suit that felt like a second skin, she was standing with her back to me, looking out at the city lights. She turned slowly at the sound of my footsteps. Time seemed to stand still. She wasn't wearing her wedding dress yet, just a simple silk robe, but the look in her eyes as she saw me took my breath away. There was none of her usual sweet playfulness, none of her obsessive madness, not even the excitement of a dream about to come true. It was a pure, almost terrifying focus and possession, like an ancient dragon gazing at the single, shining treasure in its hoard, with a primal, absolute certainty that transcended all reason. She walked towards me, her steps silent on the thick carpet. She stood in front of me, not touching me, just looking up, her deep, bottomless eyes scanning every inch of my face, my body, as if for the last time confirming her ownership. Then, she reached out, not to hug me, but to gently touch the left chest of my tuxedo, where my heart was beating steadily beneath. Here, her cool fingertips sent a shiver through the fabric, her voice a soft whisper. "Tomorrow, in front of everyone, will beat only for me." Her fingers slowly slid down, caressing every inch of the suit, as if stroking a priceless artifact about to be sealed away forever. "This suit looks good on you." She finally looked up, meeting my eyes, a faint, heart-stopping smile on her lips. But it will be coming off soon, and everything I give you, including my name, will be forever engraved on you. She leaned in closer, so close I could count her long eyelashes. Her breath ghosted over my lips, a gentle, chilling caress. Ethan Hayes, she said my full name, each word slow and deliberate. Are you scared? Scared? Of what? Of this wedding. Of her. Of this future about to be set in stone. I looked at her, at this face that was as beautiful as it was obsessive. The fear, the struggle, the resentment I once felt. It all receded like a tide, leaving only a calm finality and a strange peace that can only be found at the bottom of an abyss. I lowered my head, my forehead touching hers, our noses brushing, our breaths mingling. No, I heard my own clear, calm voice say. She smiled, a truly content, cloudless smile. She closed her eyes and leaned in to kiss me. The kiss was unlike any before. It was not a test, not a declaration, not a comfort, not a passionate taking. It was a brand, a silent vow, made by both of us on the eve of the final ceremony. It was so gentle it was heartbreaking, so heavy it was suffocating. Her lips were soft and cool, a sacrificial devotion and absolute possession, gently tracing the outline of my lips, then lightly sucking on my lower lip, as if savoring a rare delicacy. I didn't move, just let her lead the kiss, feeling the gentle force that seemed to pull at my very soul, until she pulled back slightly and opened her eyes. Her eyes now held only a pure, twisted love and an almost divine satisfaction. Come on, she said, taking my hand, her voice returning to its usual sweetness, but with an undeniable power. Let's go try on my dress. She pulled me to the large, floor-to-ceiling mirror, then disappeared into the dressing room. I stood alone in front of the mirror, looking at the man in the expensive suit, his posture straight, his eyes calm to the point of emptiness. This was Ethan Hayes. After tomorrow, he would have a new last name, a permanent brand, a perfect exhibit titled Jessica Miller's husband. The reflection was familiar, yet strange. The dressing room curtain was pulled back. I turned. Time stood still again. She was standing there in the starry sky, wedding dress, a halo of light around her. Countless tiny diamonds on the dress sparkled, as if she were wearing the entire galaxy. The dress was a masterpiece of luxurious, dreamy design, making her skin look like snow, her face ethereal. She walked slowly towards me, her train flowing behind her like a cloud, a river of destiny. She stopped in front of me, and we both looked at our reflections in the mirror. Look, she said, pointing at our reflections, her voice a dreamy, possessive whisper. So perfect. In the mirror, she, in her starry sky dress, was inhumanly beautiful. And I, in my black tuxedo, was like the sole planet captured by this celestial light, destined to orbit her forever, never to escape the gravitational pull of this cage. She tilted her head and leaned against my shoulder, looking at our reflections, a contented sigh escaping her lips. After tomorrow, this mirror will only ever have the two of us in it. I wrapped my arm around her waist, my chin resting on the top of her head, and met her gaze in the mirror. Yes, forever. This prisoner in the mirror, I was a willing one. The wedding day was impossibly sunny, as if all the gold in the world had been melted down and poured over the lakeside white estate. I stood at the flower-adorned altar, the blue lake and endless sky behind me, a long, white carpet stretching out before me. At the far end, a pair of ornate wooden doors were closed. My heart beat steadily in my chest, a calm, almost numb rhythm. My suit was perfectly pressed, the blue sapphire cufflinks catching the light, silently echoing the smartwatch on my wrist and the tattoo at the base of my ring finger. They were all chains, beautiful and strong, and I had grown accustomed to their weight. The air was filled with the scent of flowers, champagne, and the gazes of 100 guests, curious, appraising, some laced with a hidden malice. I could feel their eyes on me, like tiny needles pricking at the expensive shell of this exhibit. David Miller sat in the front row, his face impassive, his expression unreadable. Only his hawk-like eyes, when they occasionally flickered towards me, held a cold, dying ember. He had failed. The beverages had been replaced. his carefully planned surprise would not happen. The officiant's voice was warm and smooth, guiding the ceremony. But I could barely hear him. All my senses were focused on those closed doors. Time seemed to stretch, then freeze. Finally, under the watchful eyes of everyone, the doors slowly swung inward. Sunlight flooded the entrance, bathing the figure in the doorway in a blinding, ethereal glow. She stood there, in the dress of 1,000 stars, her face veiled, but her unique presence, her obsessive, powerful aura that existed only for me, pierced through every barrier and stole my breath. The world lost all its color and sound the moment she appeared. She took the arm of a respected family elder and, to the sound of a holy processional, began to walk towards me. Her train swept over the white carpet like a flowing cloud, an unstoppable tide of fate. Her steps were slow and steady. Her gaze, through the thin veil, was fixed on me, locked, unwavering. It was no longer the purely possessive gaze from the mirror last night. It was a mix of immense pride, complete surrender, and a near-tragic determination of a dream about to be realized. I watched her approach, watched her walk from the end of that light-filled aisle into my tangible reality. The elder placed her hand in mine. Her hand was cold, her fingertips trembling slightly, but the moment I held it, she gripped back tightly, as if she had finally reached the shore after a lifetime of drifting. The officiant began the vows. The ancient words about sickness and health, poverty and wealth, sounded both absurd and solemn in this context. Jessica Miller, do you take Ethan Hayes to be your husband, to love and to cherish for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Without a moment's hesitation, her clear voice came through the veil, firm and resolute. Ido. There was no bridal coyness in her voice, only a possessive, unquestionable certainty. Ethan Hayes, do you take Jessica Miller to be your wife, to love and to cherish for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? All eyes were on me again. I could feel the cold pressure from David Miller's direction, and the almost bone-crushing tension and anticipation from the hand holding mine. Until death do you part? I turned my head to look at her. Beneath the veil, her eyes were shining with an incredible intensity, a whirlwind of love, obsession, fear, and a desperate, all-or-nothing madness. She was waiting for my final and only answer. I looked at her, at this woman who had used every means to bind me, who had also trembled vulnerably in my arms. This woman who had given me extreme pain and a twisted peace. Until death do you part? For us, perhaps death was the only escape. And to live, to sink into an embrace in this cage she had built of love, was the eternal punishment and destiny. I turned back to the officiant, my voice calm, but clear enough for everyone to hear. Ido. The two words fell, the final verdict. I felt the hand gripping mine instantly relax, a relieved tremor running through it. You may now exchange rings. The best man brought the ring box. The two custom-designed rings sparkled in the sun, the same deep blue as all our other matching accessories. I took the woman's ring and held her left hand. Her ring finger was slender and pale, trembling slightly. I steadily slid the ring, a symbol of eternal bondage, onto her finger next to my tattoo. Then, she took the man's ring and held my left hand. Her movements were slow, deliberate, her cool fingertips brushing against my skin. Finally, she slid the cold metal band onto my left ring finger, completely covering the star tattoo. It was done. The physical, the legal, the societal, all levels of binding were now complete. You may now kiss the bride. The officiant had barely finished speaking when she, almost impatiently, lifted her own veil. Her breathtaking face was free of tears, only a radiant, almost blinding smile of absolute possession. Her eyes were like burning stars, reflecting only me. She stood on her toes, ignoring the crowd, and wrapped her arms around my neck, pulling me down to her. Then she kissed me. The kiss was unlike any before. It was a conquering, a triumphant, a world-declaring kiss. Her lips and tongue were hot and urgent, an undeniable force, delving, tangling, plundering, as if to brand my very soul, to absorb it into her body, never to be separated. The sun shone down on us, applause and faint gasps rising from the crowd. But I couldn't hear or see anything. All I could sense was her fiery breath, her soft tongue, her arms wrapped tightly around me, and the feel of the new, cold, hard ring pressing into my palm. I closed my eyes and returned her fierce, possessive kiss, my hands around her waist, pulling her even closer. One impulsive move, a lifetime of introversion. The price was paid, my freedom for her whole world. And she was my whole world. The applause was a roaring tide. Under the gaze of everyone, witnessed by the sun and the lake, we held each other, our lips locked, imprisoned by love, sealed with a kiss. This was it. This was fine. Until I found a photo in her old phone. It was from 3 months before I had worked up the courage to talk to her. In the picture, I was on the bus, half asleep.